For recording purposes, it's at 6:47. Could you call a roll, please?
Alan David. Dean Doobie.
Yep.
Lee Doobie.
Here.
David Gerns.
Here.
Dan Guy.
Here.
Julie Hammond.
Here.
John Hughes.
Here.
Michael Mascola.
Here.
John O'Neill.
Here.
Jim Paul.
Here.
Also seated at the committee table are Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler, and Business Administrator, Jeff Down.
Okay. Mr. Hughes, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The approval of the committee, I'd like to relocate the review of the minutes until after we do new business. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Correspondence folder, most of the correspondence was distributed, but it's, there's also some late arrivals that are being distributed now. While that's going around, I'd like to open up for delegations and individuals. We have a large crowd here. I ask you to, A, speak up so everyone can hear you. B, it's great that you approve what the person might say, but let's not have applauses. It just breaks up the flow of the meeting and creates a distraction. Thank the folks at the end of the meeting. Also, finally, because we have a number of people who want to speak, to keep your points, discussions to 3 to 4 minutes each, if possible, okay? The first person I have is Ryan Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. Ryan Richmond, President of the Timberlane Teachers Association. I speak tonight to address some of the misconceptions regarding the impact of drastic cuts to the operating budget of the Timberlane Regional School District discussed at the November 30th joint meeting between the Budget Committee and the School Board. While it is incredibly important that local governments be fiscally responsible, they are also obliged to provide their communities with quality services. This is why we advocate for and implore you to adopt a reasonable budget, one that puts students first. This is not only about quality education and low teacher-to-student ratios, a key factor in student success supported by almost every academic study done on the issue, but about programs, opportunities, and services. Staff reductions needed to pay for a cut of millions of dollars from the budget cannot be accommodated through retirements or attrition alone. This idea is not rooted in practice. Attrition needs to be a long-term, well-thought-out program so as not to affect the services that are provided by the district. Not one person in this room can confidently predict or assure that the right number of professionals in the right positions will retire at the end of the 2017-2018 year. This is also compounded by the reality that teachers are certified to teach particular subjects at particular levels. One cannot expect that the reductions would not impact programs. If 5 English teachers retired, you would have to replace them or face a devastating impact on our high school. And these are not, as some have said, scare tactics. This could not be further from the truth. These are real possible outcomes of a drastic reduction in funding for a school district. Though these may be well-intentioned but misguided decisions, they've been made in other districts, and the consequences are real. Substandard education, loss of populations as they move out of a district, and reduction in home values. You are stewards of this district. Your primary charge, as is ours, is the education of the children of our 4 towns. The decisions that you make as a body tonight and over the next few weeks will have direct impacts on people's lives. The people that I represent, the people that you represent, and the students that we are all pledged to serve are depending on you to make the right decisions. Be public school proud. Be Timberlane proud. Thank you.
Lori Hirschenroder.
Hi, Laurie Hirschenroder, President of the Timberlane Support Staff Union. I am so proud to be here representing the district's paraeducators. Day in and day out, we work directly with all students. Tonight, we are here for our students, our colleagues, and our community. You may think we are here just as staff, but more than 80% of our membership lives in one of our 4 towns. That means the overwhelming majority of us are taxpayers, parents, and stakeholders in the Timberlane community. To date, there has not been a clear picture provided as to what a large cut to our 2018-2019 Timberlane budget will look like and how it will impact either the education of our students or taxpayers. TSSU has always respectfully considered the taxpayers of our district when negotiating our contracts. I want you to know that the average salary of a Timberlane paraeducator is $17,000 per school year, which is 182 workdays. The starting pay for a paraeducator is between $13,200 and $13,888. And for most paraeducators who have been in the district for 20 years or more, the maximum pay is about $21,500 for most. No, we are not paid for holidays, vacation days, or through the summer. Since August 29th of this year, there have been about 20 paraeducators hired. That was about the same number of new hires last year. One cannot presume just because an employee leaves that there is not a need to fill. Since October 30th, there have been 7 para positions posted. These are not just unfilled positions, they identify needs of our students. None of us want taxes to increase. However, you cannot ignore the costs pushed down from the state, mandated increases in contractual obligations. I do ask that you consider the full impact of your decision. A drastic cut will be detrimental to our schools. Imagine if all sides to this budget discussion could join together to help improve how the state of New Hampshire fulfills its obligation to educate our future generations and meet its obligation to fully fund its share of the payments to the New Hampshire retirement system. We wouldn't be in the middle of this dilemma. We are dedicated professionals who are public school proud. We are Timberlane proud. Please support Timberlane schools and know the impact of any decision you make. Thank you for your time.
Donald Woodworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to address the Budget Committee this evening. I'm Don Woodworth of Atkinson, New Hampshire. I'm a principal at Timberlane Regional High School. I'm enjoying my 38th year working in the district. And like so many others in this room around this district, I love my job. I believe that educators are critical to the academic, social, civic, creative, emotional, and personal growth of our students, and that through education, we shape the future of our communities and essentially society as a whole. It's an ever more difficult job. Our students are growing up in a complicated world, fraught with challenges and difficult choices. It will take the collective contributions of the entire community to equip students with the skills, attitudes, and aptitudes they need to be successful. I believe that we have an opportunity to arrive at a budget that will help us do that. All that said, I'm here to share some concerns that I have as that budget figure gets determined by this committee. I believe that our district residents value and want a strong school system, that they value and want a strong academic program, that they value a caring and talented faculty, staff, and administration, and they value the facilities that provide the space and features necessary to support a 21st century learning environment and healthy co-curricular programs such as athletics and music and theater. I'm proud of the accomplishments of our students over the past 5 years since Dr. Metzler arrived and brought with him a commitment to achievement and rigor and accountability. And I'm proud of the changes we have made to keep our district up to speed with the expectations of our school board. I'm proud of our effort. I'm proud of our teachers' effort. And I'm proud of the administrators, especially our deans, as they engage in the writing and implementation of our K-12 competency-based curriculum. I'm proud of the support we're giving to students and teachers as together we strive to meet the aspirations of this district. Our schools are positioned well for academic success long-term, and we cannot afford to jeopardize that. Lately, it has been difficult to watch the impact of the budget process on our faculty and staff as they are referred to as superfluous and fear that their jobs are being threatened. We would not be able to support the great work of our teachers with an administration that was reduced by about a third or more as proposed in the first draft of the budget, or large reductions in faculty and staff. Our administrative teams work closely with our teachers and our counselors and our paraprofessionals to meet student needs, which are greater now than ever. All of us administrators, we lead the work, the important work of this district. We are teachers and mentors, curriculum writers, department chairs, budget developers, disciplinarians, professional development presenters, program implementers, members of district and local-based committees. We're evaluators and coaches and summer school and summer program directors and evening division teachers and directors. Further, it's important to recognize that our academic deans work with our teachers pre-K to 12 and do a fabulous job. Collectively, we are an administrative team that works to support teachers when they encounter difficulties with students, with parents, with professional practice. We are critical to our district's continued success and improvement. Please, at the end of the day, present the district voters with a budget that honors education, that provides opportunities for all students, and which allows us to deliver our program of studies. Please do not present a budget that targets its proud employees, the backbone of our district, to arrive at an arbitrary low number. Think of their value as you consider the cost. And consider the cost to our students if you undervalue their teachers, administrators, and paraprofessionals. Thank you.
Okay, we've only had a few slips. Are there any other folks who have not put in a slip who would like to speak? Second call. Anybody else like to comment? Okay, we're moving on. I'd like to move into unfinished business. And I would like a motion, I'd like to move to the parking lot issue that deals with mileage reimbursements and revenue ahead of the budget review.
So moved.
Is there a discussion?
I do have discussion on that. We did not have the income statements in our packets. Is that something that you have for us?
The printer, yeah.
Okay, so I want to make sure we have. Okay.
Okay, all in favor of beginning the meeting, the work with parking lot issues of mileage reimbursements and revenue? Signify by saying aye, raise your hands. Opposed? Okay, so I'll turn the meeting over to So, Mr. Dowd?
So in your packets, probably toward the end, you'll see the scheduled captioned Timberlane Budget Committee student reimbursed CTE travel. This was in response, I think, to a question that you had, Lee, in particular. And the total amount of reimbursements for students for career technical education travel totaled $17,071.60. We do receive reimbursement from the state from that through their CTE reimbursement program. So I think that you had a question on that, specifically whether they were paid mileage, how much it was, and I'm not sure if it was what the program was.
No, it was really what our, for out-of-district curriculum that the students are attending, what is our total cost? And then you made me aware there was reimbursement associated with it.
Correct, yes.
So are there any other costs to the district over and above this 17,000?
Sure, yeah, we have transportation costs with busing, as well relating to this program, which we budget as well.
Rephrase that, are there any costs to the districts that we reimburse to the students that aren't reimbursed to us?
Certain costs are reimbursed to parents under certain federal programs,
And
and
that's reimbursed through the state as well?
federal, yes, through the state, yep. And aside from that, we have out-of-district costs for special placements and that sort of thing, but that's typically our own transportation.
That's fine. I just, really what I wanted to get to the bottom to is there are out-of-district programs that we're sending students to, and it's putting us on the hook for reimbursables, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
No.
Thank you.
So when you mentioned reimbursables, if I go back to that, you mentioned reimbursables or expenses, we'd be paying that mileage reimbursement out. I'm getting confused because we also get reimbursement back on some of those, so,
But we're not talking, 100,000 plus.
no.
Okay. Any other questions on that issue? The next is to discuss revenue.
Yes, and really revenue at this point is really a very preliminary, very, very high level, very, very preliminary number. I've put together our budget trends. The unassigned fund balance, I would, at a very, very far level, at this point estimated about $1.5 million going to next year. Our other tuition and other related costs are listed in terms of the revenue that we receive for those. Food service, I expect to be consistent. Revenue there was a bit down, but I think that we are typically offset with expense. We typically offset expenses as well. I think that some of the other areas are a little bit more difficult to exactly pinpoint based on the environment that we find ourselves in. Obviously, we've seen some adequacy aid changes or potential changes in the future, and at this point, I don't know that anyone is necessarily entirely 100% sure what the impact is going to be on our districts based on a number of factors that have changed as that bill went through, including some stop-loss factors that I think the legislature has put into place, as well as factors involving income criteria and other criteria that really, really isolate the pool of candidates who would be in line to apply for that type of reimbursement. That reimbursement would be awarded to the student or student's family, not to our district. But as of right now, it's really too preliminary to tell what the impact would be, and based on the number of factors that it appears the legislature has put in place to restrict what we, or what the applicants, which applicants can apply, it looks like it's going to be a pretty low impact at this point. As soon as I can get more details on it, I always take a look at revenue on that, but I don't think it's going to have a huge impact as presented currently. Any other questions on revenue? Again, it's very, very high level. It's very,
So what I'm seeing here is, looking at the history, is that if you look at down at the bottom, the total income, 16 and 17, we had 19.3 million is total income. 17 and 18 is 18.3, so we're roughly a reduction in $1 million of income from last year's budget to this one that we're currently operating in right now. That's basically analogous to just taking that $1 million and adding it to the expense side because what's going to happen is that it's the delta between our income and what the budgets we produce is what's going to get fed back to the pool that's then divided according to ADM and EPV and all those other formulas. In the 16-17 school year, the direct assessment, which is what's going to be charged back to all the towns, was roughly 50 million, almost exactly. In 17-18, which is this current fiscal year, we're almost up to 53 million. That's a $3 million change in 1 year. And what we have right now is with the proposal of this income of 17.8 million, we're going to get 51.7 million charged back, which is going to be less than what it's going to be this year that we're currently operating in. And that's what, based on the current budget that we've approved here already, that's already been approved, of the 59,599. So anything that we add to this budget today or tonight is going to increase that and amplify it. And it's going to make it even larger. So I just want everybody to be aware of where all these numbers are going to glide and when the tax bills, because I didn't even know it was going to be this. That's a $3 million increase in 1 year that we're going to get. So the next tax season, we're going to see, but be prepared because that's a $3 million hit. That's a very large hit. We're seeing right here, of going between years of like 1.5. This is going to be 3. So it's going to be 2 times the amplitude.
Any response to that, Mr. Todd?
It's just an observation. So what you're saying is that the assessment itself, as projected here, the net district assessment of 51,756,000. You're saying that you're seeing that as a $3 million swing.
No, I'm just looking at going from the 16-17 school year to the current year, the 17-18, 3 million. I know we're talking about next year's, we're going to be talking about that.
Right.
But this is saying to me, we're going
I see.
to be in a tsunami come next tax season.
I see what you're saying.
Because there's going to be a $3 million extra chargeback to the town of, this past tax season, we split 50 million between all 4 towns. Next tax season, we're going to be splitting 53 million. That $3 million is going to be made up by all 4 towns.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, yep.
Proportionally to all the dynamics of the Articles of Agreement.
We still have a while until that rate gets set, and we'll have a much better idea, obviously, where we're at in terms of,
Well, we know that the budget is fixed, so that's the raise and appropriate portion, that's fixed. That's not going to change. The only saving grace that we're going to have to actually lower this number is to raise in more revenue. And do we have an opportunity to raise in more revenue? I don't see it, and I'm not trying to turn around and put people on the spot, but it's the reality that we face. Our biggest revenue source, as we could say, is maybe the PAC renting that on out. We're not going to make up $3 million or some proportion of that to offset that. I know that part of this is the educational grant that's come down. The state follows the student population. We know that we've lost 1,100 kids in this district, 25% of our volume of the volume of kids going through here. The state's not going to turn around and give us the same money that it did in 2007 and 8 time frame that they are today. It's just a fact of reality, and we have to make the adjustments here at the local level. We can complain all we want about the state, but that's not going to get fixed tonight. What's going to get fixed is what we do here, and then it's going to be reflected in our tax bills.
Questions or comments? Yes.
So I understand, so to put this is the first time I've seen this. To put this in perspective, so this 17-18, these are hard numbers.
well, those are what we had budgeted, and.
Right, but based on if we don't change that 59, this number here, this extra 3 million will get divvied up, what, into June?
Correct.
Bill?
Well,
May I speak?
go please, go in.
What's going to happen is that at the end of the Jeff, we're going to finalize the year. We're going to turn around and what was the revenue for this portion? This is the only thing that will be adjusted. Jeff will have an opportunity through the Department of Revenue to give an updated statement that will say, well, this is what we estimated back, like now's time frame we're doing it for next year. before you finalize those documents, you're allowed to turn around and give an updated revise. You know, as you basically, you've closed the year where you're getting towards the end of it, you've got a closer snapshot of what that picture is. That would be an opportunity to update that. And since these numbers are estimates, it would be, if those estimates do change in reality, that would be good, but we hope that they're on the upside, because if they go on the downside, it's even gonna make this problem even worse.
So I guess my question is, I guess this is for Mr. Dowd. So what's your confidence that these numbers, as far as accuracy, I mean, are they likely, I know the year's not closed out. Is it what I'm just trying to figure out, come close of the year, as Mr. O'Neill said, it'd be great if we had more revenue. It softens that 3 million. What's your confidence that this number will stay the same? This number will go down because we get more revenue income?
Well, I think that looking at our 16-17 unassigned fund balance for the 17-18 year that rolled in, we're talking about the 2.409 instead of that 1925 that you see at the top, 1,925,000 at the top. And so going into the 18-19 budget year, I am, and I will be frank with you and just understand the way this is said, I'm 100% certain that these numbers are not going to be the final numbers. Now, they might be up, they might be down in terms of our state reimbursement or any of the other factors that we have that we can collect on. Unassigned fund balance at $1.5 million, that's a reasonable and conservative estimate. I think that the other estimates are realistic and conservative based on what our actual anticipated reimbursements are and revenue stream is going to be from those. We really have to be on the conservative side of this on revenue. And I don't know, perhaps everyone here may have seen the situation out in Pembroke where they did have a revenue side issue, where the revenues were not properly evaluated and estimated. So they ended up having a shortfall on the revenue side. So George tended to be conservative before me in his revenue estimates. I tend to be conservative but realistic as well. So I only hope that the revenue scene would be getting better for our total income, but by what amount I could not tell you exactly. I do know that it's unlikely that any number is going to come in exactly on point with where we are and what we presented today.
So is this something that we can keep monitoring? You're gonna close the year out on June 30th.
Correct.
And so as we tick more days by and we watch all of our possibilities for income come in, this number is going to be very dynamic and keep moving.
Correct, yeah. Once we go to the public hearing and once we go to the deliberative session, our revenues are budgeted just like our expenses are. And so, of course, we can keep an eye on it, and we do keep an eye on it, and we do reevaluate it into the year as well, before all the tax rates are set and before everything is apportioned. So we do have opportunities to take a look and monitor that revenue outside of the budget, the revenue budget cycle. We've had a couple other factors as well involving some grants and federal funds coming in that we continue to look at in terms of how do we look better to the state in those regards. And some of those allocations, and I won't speak to them precisely, involve our status as apparently a more affluent district than we had been in previous years. So we're losing a little bit of the allocation, or have been in the past, losing some of that allocation based on that alone. I won't speak too much on that because I don't have the intricacies that go along with how that works precisely. Mm-hmm. But these are all aspects that we are taking a look at, and we continue to monitor. Is it okay?
Yes.
If you remember correctly, we monitor this all year in terms of spend. A few years ago, if you remember, I froze spending sometime in late February, early March, and we brought back about $4 million in surplus. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of action that would help bring that total income number up and change that delta between what the towns are billed and what it looks like today. So that's one action we take. We watch it very carefully. You know, we project a certain number of surplus, and in certain years, the last couple of years, we've come back with quite a bit. I think it was 4 and then 3 the last year ballpark. And then
6 to 4, yeah.
All depends on current school board and spending and how many projects they may
take on late in the spring at the last minute, ask what the surplus number is, they take on additional projects. That takes an impact on the surplus, but we've been watching this carefully. So to your question, we monitor it all year, monthly, to try to make sure that we're hitting target. It's not as easy as, we go 1 month and then multiply it times 12, because there are, those are the things I rely on the business administrator for. What are the expenses that we're gonna have in April, May, and June that are last minute kind of things that you're paying for that change those numbers. So it's not equally divided, but at the 6-month part, we were looking at what we think the spend for the year would be. I was hoping it would be in the 69 range, but we do believe it'll probably be closer to 70 in this particular year.
But we've
again,
got
those
to be
are-
very
those-
forward-thinking in that response, because we're trying to address, bring surplus into the subsequent year if we find that, it's looking like we're gonna be receiving less in aid and less in reimbursements and that sort of thing. So we have to be proactive about it. It's a slight inverse cycle. Once the budgets are set, they're set, but we have the ability to, if we can issue a spending freeze.
Yeah, and then so we get into, what helps contribute to the surplus. Obviously, if you have positions that you can't fill, like, for instance, at our last meeting, we had a retirement speech and language pathologist. Well, we're not trying not to fill it, we're trying to fill it, we can't fill, we have 2 of those now. And sometimes, although that's open, the cost to get someone from Ceres to do those on an hourly or a weekly or case by case, sometimes those expenses far exceed what we have budgeted. That goes out of the special ed budget, but in some instances. So, we have, you always hear those unfilled positions. Well, they're not unfilled because we're choosing not to fill them to contribute to surplus. They're unfilled because we can't find somebody. It's a critical shortage area. Could be a reading specialist in the high school. It could be an elementary math specialist. And so we look for them until we find them, and then we try to hire the right person. We don't put, I'm using your term, just a warm body in to hold the spot. If we don't have the right person, we don't fill it. We don't fill it. And then we try to backfill the work with some of the excellent support that our teachers receive, either administratively or from our support staff. For instance, last year, one of your deans that you heard about, he taught 6 classes because we couldn't find a teacher in a particular area. He taught 6 classes. Normal load is 5. He taught 6 classes and did all his administrative work. That's your science and technology guy right there, Mark Pedersen. Did us a favor. So we thanked him, because we couldn't find anybody better. And he stepped in and did a great job. But those are the kinds of things that happen with some of these open positions, unfilled positions, and surplus. So we're watching those numbers just like you're watching them. We certainly don't want that kind of delta either, to Mr. O'Neill's point. We certainly try to keep it as stable as possible. So we like the surplus to stay somewhat stable, and what we're actually billing the towns to stay somewhat stable. But it's hard because we don't control the tax rates in the towns or the valuations of the homes and those sorts of things. We do control, obviously, what we build them. So that's, I hope that helps.
On this chart, it shows a 1-year history, 16, 17 to the 17, 18, so those are the real numbers. And it shows that 3 million increase as far as the district assessment. Does anybody here know what, like, previous years might have been for increase from year to year?
Well, if
So
you
I
take,
see 3, but if I look at previous years, what's more of the norm?
well, if you took a look at this and you had no idea what this meant, right, you would just look right to, okay, let's look, other local revenue. When I see 817,000 and the next year it's 350, well, I know there's 500 right there, ballpark, right?
Where are you on this?
I'm in, on line 1990, other local revenue.
Okay.
So that would be a question, what happened to our other local revenue? Right? Do you have a simple answer to that question?
Which line, I'm sorry?
1990, other local revenue. In 16-17, it was 817,550. Last year was 350,407. So you,
I believe we received back some, in that year, some, I was at the Health Trust, LGC.
that's what I'm asking.
Budgeted blip, yeah. I want to say LGC. I believe that was an odd,
So if that was that, it would have been a one-time infusion. So if you would have looked at it, if you've had 15 and 16 on this, it probably would have been 350,000 most likely, and it went up that 1 year because you had it. Maybe though, but we had a couple of years in a row with those health trust refunds.
There was, and
Yeah,
the
one was
towns
like-
got them as well.
Yeah, so, and I don't know when they started about 13, 14, and maybe that was the last year.
It was 2 years, I believe, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, so that would be a number that would jump off. If you look at the differences, the surplus is a little different there.
So I think the question was, what was the district assessment, does anybody know, what 15 and 16 looked like? That's the question. That's what I think Mr. Muscola was asking.
In terms of, in terms of budget or actually?
Yes.
Well, I'm looking at the district assessment, so Mr. O'Neill says, it's going up 3 million from those 2 years. I'm just trying to find out, is 3 million typical? Is 3 million not typical?
So 15, 16, budget, assessment would have been 48,215,000. 16, 17, 50,
What's
502.
that, what was it again? 48?
Yeah,
48.2, I think he said.
Mhm.
What year was that?
That was 15,
15,
16?
16. So that would have been like the comparable budget number, and then 16, 17 budget,
50.
yeah,
So that's a 2 million increase that year.
correct.
So it's like a 1.8 that it increased from 15, 16 to 16, 17.
Yeah, and I know people didn't like hearing this, right, when I explained to you, and I know we talked about what can we afford and how long can we afford it. It typically goes up around $2 million without us adding anything, from contracts that we negotiate, health insurance, and maybe, like every year there's an odd thing, like a bus contract or something but that's where, it goes up. Not quite 2 million, it could be 1.8. You're looking at 3 in this particular instance. I don't have that explanation off the top of my head, but, like I said, that I'm looking at the spend, because we went back, Mr. Boyle and I went back, and we're like, all right, you spent 65 2 years ago, last year you spent 67, that's why I was like, well, we're hoping to be around 69 this year, and it's looking like it's pushing closer to 70 based on some of the early projections. Again, I'm guessing 5-6 months into this, trying to figure out what that final spend will be, and then we can start to predict what we think the surplus will be based on that. So if we spent 69 and we have 71, is it 71.7 or do we have 71.5 this year? 71.7,
71.7,
yeah,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, you do the math, that's quite a big jump in what would be the line 0770, the unassigned fund balance, provided the board doesn't choose to spend some of it late in the spring or during the year.
So this is all, you're going up like 2 million on the expense side, and that's just, the effect of that is whatever that 2 million increase is going, if the revenue is flatlined, but now that you have a declining revenue line, I mean, we've gone from 19.2 down to 18.3, down to 17.8, that's just compounding the problem.
You're looking at a different number, which is probably the most important number if we're talking about tax bills. It's what the bills are.
That's what it's gonna get to. I mean,
Yeah.
it's always gonna get to the end consumer, which is the people that fund this whole operation. And it's not going up just with the $2 million increase in the expense of the budget. It's being increased by that, and then amplified by that on top of it with the loss in revenue. Now, if the revenue was increasing, it would actually take that slope and turn around and lower it, which would be the ideal solution.
It's not quite.
If you could grow revenue at the same rate of the
Costs,
growth
expenses.
of your expenses, then you'd have a net neutral, effect on the tax rate, and that would be ideal. I don't think anybody would be here tonight.
No, and to your point, what I looked at, what I thought was reasonable, and that's where I came up with the 72.8 number. So I was looking at what I thought the spend would be next year, what I was hoping for anticipated surplus, and I was like, all right, with 71.7 last year, if we have close to $2 million in increases, and we know the default's up like almost 73.7, I thought 72.8 was kind of cutting that in half, and would take care of some of that lost revenue and stabilize what the bills would be. But that's where I came up with that, and that really was in consultation with Chairman Boyle. Not that he necessarily agreed with me, I'm not suggesting that. It was just about spend, what we thought we would spend, plus what I thought would be surplus, so that we'd have that line's 0770, the unassigned fund balance, also known as surplus, that you'd have that each year. A year without that would be, I think we'd all agree, would be devastating. If that number was 200,000 and not 1.9 or 1.8, you'd lose, that would reflect in the bill. Does everybody follow me on that? If that for top line was only like 200,000 and wasn't 1.9, that would be like 1.7 lost revenue, and that would increase the bill almost by $2 million
Alone.
alone. So that was really my rationale as how I got to that number, because it really, before we added the thing, if we just took last year's budget and added the increases that we have no control over, we were at 73.5, 73.6, somewhere around there.
questions or yes?
Can you, what are we anticipating our surplus to be this year, based on what we know now?
Well, I've included in the budget about 1.5 million.
That's that top line,
Would be my best estimate at this point, and perhaps it'll be more, perhaps it'll be less, but
but it's in that range.
it would be in that range as of right now.
Okay.
Our business administrators tend to be very conservative with that number, for good reason,
Right.
right? And I would ask George, now I ask Jeff all the time, you know, what's the default look like? What's the surplus look like? You know, those are the basic, the standard questions almost every week we're down there. You know, how are we gonna do, how are we doing, how are we doing? And you don't always have the answer, so he projects, that number's probably, I'm gonna do it to you, Jeff. That number might be a little low.
It's
The
probably
1.5.
gonna be 1.8, 1.9,
I hope.
based on what your run rate is now.
Yep, I hope. And that's why, you know, when you get into the spring, that's why sometimes you have to stop spending, and the only the departments that we have control over, you know, if money hasn't been spent, sometimes we'll put a freeze on to try to control that number, because that number will have a direct impact on tax rate at some point. That's really the best, you know, we can do.
Yeah, because that number up here shifts, it affects
Right.
Yeah.
the district assessment below.
Yeah, no, Sean, you made a good point.
Okay.
Any questions or concerns about the income side? Number 4.
I do have a question in regards to, I know that we did open up the PAC to, this is, have a little sidebar, but I know that we're starting to get more in there. Is that gonna probably produce some more revenue on that side of it?
We hope so. You know, Mr. D has some plans, and I was with him today. I met about something else, and he said he wanted to sit down and talk to me more about planning that forward. You know, they had, in the past, and I'm gonna butcher the name, so I'm not gonna say it, but I know they had like 6-figure kind of events there. And they're much smaller events now, but there may be more of them. I know the symphony orchestra that we have in there now that people love, they're doing a great job. That's helped with the revenue side of things. So, he's very creative, as you know. He knows that place better than, and that business better than anybody that I've ever met. So I have all the confidence in the world. You know, he's been looking at that and trying to find some creative ways to work on that. I think the hard part was, you know, and this was long before my time here, to think that place was gonna be self-sustaining and pay for all the operational costs of the PAC. I don't see it. I don't
would
see
agree
it.
with that. It's,
Yeah.
was wishful thinking at the time. And,
Yeah.
but with this new added venues coming in there and stuff, what is the potential of an increase? And I don't see it making, you know,
Yeah, we're not
the
making a
$1
million.
million. I mean, you know, if we can even get it close to be self-sufficient, that would be ideal.
Yeah, I would imagine, but I don't wanna put too much pressure on him, but I know he's working on it, and I know typically everything he does really, really well, so I'm cautiously optimistic that he'll be able to do some good work there and get some good groups in there. You know, one of the things, though, we did shift, just so people know a little bit, we made it more of a community place, so we made it more affordable for nonprofits, and we tried to get the community in there more often. You know, groups like the Lions Clubs and things like that, so, because it is a community venue. So, that, you know, that hurts the revenue side of things, but it helps the community in a different kind of way, so. So we've taken a really good close look at that, and hopefully we'll be able to change those numbers in a positive way moving forward.
Thank you.
Any other discussions on this? Okay,
With that, I'd make a motion to accept the proposal for total income of $17,843,790.
is there a second?
I'll second.
You wanna call it an estimate?
Absolutely. You can amend that. That's fine.
It's a proposal. I mean, I'm fine with an estimate.
Yes.
Why are we accepting this budget?
We have to, part of the documents that we sign, there's income sides of this. All this stuff was probably previously just generated and put on there and.
Yeah, it's on the final form, the MS.
MS 27.
Right.
So we're just agreeing on that, and then Jeff would then take these numbers and transpose them onto that form.
Gives me the ability to know that, hey, we've looked at it.
But are you ready to lock in these as estimates, or do you still need to crunch more numbers?
If they should change, I'm more than happy to come back.
I think, wasn't the motion, can you read the motion back, please?
Motion to accept the 2018-19 proposed revenue budget.
If I
Line
can,
item 17,843.
The fact that it's
We can make
proposed.
another motion, you know, next meeting where at the public hearing.
I would prefer a motion to accept the budget, and then should those numbers change or be revised, we can re-accept it, but at least I know going forward, I can use those numbers.
All right, the only reason I brought it up is I know you had a lot going on. I know you wanted to push this off as a little longer than you could. And I didn't want to think that this was a number that you were comfortable with at a finality level.
Exactly, yeah, and if it gets revised, that's fine, but at least I have something that I can work with.
You remember Mr. Stokinger's favorite phrase? It was a little discretion on these, right?
I thought you were going to go with the crystal ball one. Yeah.
I didn't mention Chris Paul once, just for the record.
Noted.
Mr. Paul,
That record is now broken.
Yes.
Here's my second the motion, and I think we need to vote on it, two factors. And not to use your crystal ball, however, it's like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. And using the term estimate means he has a leeway to come back and tell us whether he's on target or off target. It's a starting point, plus it gives transparency to the audience, both out in TV land and here tonight, that the budget's not an exact science. I don't care what anybody thinks that it is out there, it's not exact.
I might suggest a polite revision, if you're okay, I think it was read as a proposed income.
This,
I would
if I
say-
can back on up for a second, with this income side of it, is when it comes time in the fall to set the tax rates and so forth, Jeff has an opportunity to update these revenues from, the initial revision, which would be this one, to another one that has pretty accurate, because it's gonna be, the year will be closed. And since the dynamics of our years, in a town situation, we're setting tax rates, and we're not crossed that fiscal year yet. We're like, November, December, and that's when our fiscal year ends. But here, it's already closed at the end of June, so you already know what those figures were. So you can do a very accurate revised, pending like the auditor's blessings on it, which pretty much I wouldn't think that much would change out of that, so that you can give another opportunity to do that. The only thing that's different is that now when you turn around and you use the expense side of it, which is the main part of our budget that we're talking about, that is fixed. You're not gonna be able to adjust that. You're gonna raise and appropriate that amount of money. It's what gets charged back to the towns is that delta, the district assessments portion of that, which is that charge
My only
money.
concern was that if we were to vote on this, that we didn't lock him in on these numbers when he had the accurate numbers down the road. And
Correct. We can update them up in, at the public hearing, deliberative session. I mean, after, we vote, as, the district votes, there's these forms that go up to DRA that says this is what the town voted for the expense side, and this was the income side, and Jeff could turn around and update them up to that. We could call a meeting and do that.
That was my only concern.
So if I could, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I think that you voted, we talked about estimate and all that, I have no problem, I'd much prefer to, this is the budget. And then if something happens that we don't take another vote, that's the budget. It's not an estimate, that's the budget, we've approved it. And certainly if I have a revised, I'm gonna come back to you and say, hey, let's take a look, get it revised, what do you think?
No, I would agree with that.
Thank
That's what you do. You have the flexibility with that, with the income side of it. The expense side of it, though, that's the, public hearing, deliberative session, that portion of it. It gets locked, and there's nothing to change after that portion of it, going to the voters.
Any other discussion on this?
One more.
One more, yes.
We're voting only the income amounts
Correct.
and the bottom line income, not the district assessment or the total lines on this document.
Correct. It's the income side of it. That is the effect of what it would be, because right now, we've already approved the 69,599 number. So this is what it would be, the 51,756, 165 is what we're estimating right now would be the district assessment portion of it.
If we came to an agreement and moved to public hearing a $69 million budget.
Correct.
I just want to make sure the intent is to vote on a 17 million point
Yeah, that is the motion. We're just talking about the
Not an
income side
assessment,
of
not a
it.
total.
And we'll be talking about the expense later in our meeting.
Any other questions? I'd like to move the question. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, moving on to the expense side. To get started, I would like Mrs. Doobie to explain. She did a spreadsheet based on the revision, the proposed reductions in the first draft of the budget. And I'd like her to go over that and explain the form and what we're doing.
I will do part of it, you're gonna need to do part of it as well.
Would you mind if I just took a moment to, in your packets in front of you, you'll see you'd asked for our prioritization of those items listed as cuts from the budget, which was provided within both an administrative priority 1 to 5, one being the highest, as well as a category. The next sheet you have is captioned sorted by category of priority and prioritization. That's the one that Eileen put together, and that breaks things out a little bit more in a refined way. Beyond that is, the next sheet is the CIP plan. Just for your reference, this was a document that changed to the extent that we had an updated date. It was last seen by the school board on 12/7. Further on down, we have a schedule which we'll get to, which Julie put together, which I've simply reproduced in your packet. I did not put that together. And you had a few other, another document or two in there that we've already looked at, so I just wanted to get some context as to what was in here and why it was in here.
Okay, Sam, what I'd like to do is to have Mrs. Doobie explain, go over the, her spreadsheet of priorities of the cuts. And then after that, I'd like Mrs. Hammond to explain her working budget. So,
Okay, so for context, the priorities that were discussed at the last meeting, we gave guidance as a committee to Mr. Dowd and Dr. Metzler to go back and look at the expenses that were there and say, prioritize these, come back to us with that. And so that was already sent out. And when that was sent out, I just basically tried to reformat that essentially. So there's not a whole lot of like wild and creative things here. This is like sorting. But basically breaking it out by the categories that the folks in the SAU put together. And for the benefit of the people who are in the audience that probably are not looking at the same piece of paper, there are categories for legal mandate, for student impact specifically relative to curriculum, some safety, enhanced learning, scheduled replacement, energy efficiency, staff, and I think in this case it means supporting the staff, and safety relative to students specifically. So those are the categories the SAU came up with and assigned a priority of 1 through 5 to. And so what this spreadsheet shows is essentially a summary of that information that the SAU prepared. What I did do is I highlighted the elements that I understood to be approved through the CIP process, and I would remind people that my understanding of the way that the things like the technology programs like Chromebooks, the laptops and things of that nature were all part of an approved 5-year technology plan. So this would have been approved, my understanding is, by the school board. So there's that additional level of consideration that's already taken place before it's even reached us. So highlighted those elements in there. The columns kind of go 2 different ways summarizing it. So for the folks who see the spreadsheet in front of them, if you just go down the 1 down to the bottom, you'll see the total number, 2, 3, 4, and then through the categories across, if that's useful to you. It may be more information than anybody wants, but that's what I did. So that is the thinking there. I did have a couple of comments that I just want to put out for consideration or discussion. One is just to highlight the fiber project that we've discussed in the past is technically off the expense budget. I would think at this point we said we were going to put it on the as a warrant. I think that's where we left that. So just so it's shown here, but it's not really there. Proposed as warrant. Sorry. And the other question slash comment I had was in the legal mandate category. It's basically tuition for elementary and high school, for private, that we're required to provide, but there's also student transportation. And the student transportation was categorized as priority 2, not a priority 1. And I know you had some thought process behind that, but I would argue that the priority, if it's a legal mandate, really should be a priority 1. We could argue what the number should be, but that the priority is we don't get to choose. So if it's a legal mandate, then those were the only other comments that I had on that. I don't know if any of that made sense to folks when they were looking at it. If it's useful or not, looking at it that way, I thought it might be.
I will speak, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I will speak to the question of how we can have something as a legal mandate under student transportation, that $100,000. And as I had explained to Eileen, and I think it's worthy of discussion, that is an estimate. That's an increase to the special transportation budget. That's a reasonable estimate as to what the cost will be. It's a very, very interesting situation that we've had lately where we have out-of-district placements, and a lot of our students have had the benefit of shared rides. And if you can share that ride once with another student on the way, you cut that ride in half and do it again, and so on and so forth. So you split it into thirds and quarters, whatever the case may be. Our bus company is required by our contract to do that. We don't really have any way to know whether they can do it or not. We can't go to Exeter and say, hey, do you have someone that can ride with one of our students, and they're going over to Portsmouth, whatever the case may be. But we've had the benefit of, we have to budget what we budget, but we've had the benefit of shared rides. I'd like to think because it's in the contract, but moreover because it's really a reflection of a driver shortage. So that could change at any time. There is probably a little bit of room there. That's why it's a priority 2. You know?
So is it a priority 2, just so that I'm clear, it's priority 2 because we have an opportunity that could be less than 100,000, or priority 2 because it actually is a priority 2?
Nope, it's a priority 2 because it could be less than $100,000. And if you were to say, well, what would the priority be? Well, I know if we're estimating the tuition, the private tuition costs, elementary and other high school, I know with a great deal of certainty that we're not going to find a way to make that number better.
So
But it's possible that 100,000 may be a bit better
Okay.
than.
So that wasn't the way I was thinking of prioritization, and just so people are clear, we can do it however makes sense, but it's not like we can opt out of that one.
No, but
It could be a smaller number.
but the cost is
Yeah.
what that number actually is the question.
In the end of the day, it probably isn't gonna matter for the process, but just wanted to be clear about that. Thank you.
Any questions about how these proposed reductions be prioritized? Yes.
I'm trying to get all the numbers to add up. So, existing TTA, 1.78. And then I'm going back to, what's
I was
that?
saying he was gonna do those ones, cause those are all his
Okay.
numbers.
I wanted just to see how they all rolled up.
All right, no, that's a great point. And so your numbers,
Not that I don't trust the math, I just want to understand where the priorities went
Lee,
into.
it's a fair question, and it's probably not disclosed on that spreadsheet. So what I had included, was it in here? We changed that, 'cause I thought that I had taken a look at we had some significant unemployment costs, sort of a reduction to staffing that we had. The alternative to that was it wasn't necessarily a full position, and it's at a point that we really needed to budget for it. So that $500,000 I don't think is reflected in the schedule.
I don't think it is either.
No. So there's a bit of a difference there resulting from that difference. My impression was that I had worked the numbers a little bit to try and account for some of that, but really that's where you're gonna have to look and see what the impact is. If you make additions to the budget, is it staff, is it, we know certain costs, if you approve 45.6 for laptops, 45.6 goes back in.
Thing is that we have is 80% of everything on that list is a priority 1.
Yep.
So then, if you're gonna have some kind of even a subset of priorities, you know, I mean, well, how do you break this down in that, you know? It's such a high percentage, you know, you'd like ideally to have 20% in each one of the buckets, each one of being, you know, so you can turn around and priority ones would be 20% of the $5 million, or, you know, priority twos would be roughly the same amount.
You could argue also that we've already cut some of the lower priority things through some of the discussions. Or, I said you could argue, I don't know that, I haven't done the numbers,
5.5 million is the entire, which would bring you back up to the 75, you know, point something million dollar budget, which was everything that anybody's ever wanted. So,
If I may, Mr. Chairman, so in terms of what you're seeing, and that's a fair observation, you know, really, what I tried to do beyond that, or we tried to do beyond that, is at least try and, you know, give a description as to where it falls. And if there were priorities of the Budget Committee in terms of, you know, direct student impact, or a curriculum impact, or safety impact, enhanced learning, so I did try and do subsets on that. Ultimately, what it comes down to is, and the superintendent can speak to this as well as I can, but ultimately, it is staffing, is the people that work with our students and put forward our curriculum and programs that are the highest priority on the list. We have legal priorities that rate just as high. So I think in terms of where that's at, that's really one of the main drivers.
Well, I can't say we can't ask for more administration when the student body keeps going down. This makes no sense to me. I'm sorry. You can't justify it, in my mind. That's asking, I mean, if you go back to the assessment, we're already looking at next year's tax bill is gonna be, I don't know what the outcome's gonna be there. It's not gonna be good. And then we're gonna increase it back up to the 75 million. This is not being realistic, I don't think. And to put them all in one priority is really not giving us, you know, I don't think that's fair.
if you take all this $4 million of this P1 priority and added it to the 69 that we already have, it's gonna be four on top of that would be from the district assessment that we know that we're gonna see in this fall of $53 million. It's gonna make it, you know, 54.7 million. No, no, 55.7 million is gonna be the district assessment on that.
Jeff, at
Which is almost gonna be another 3 million on top of that.
At the last meeting, we had talked about these line items, these positions, and looking at getting a total compensation, a roll-up of all of it for the filled positions versus vacant.
Right.
Do you have that?
Well, what you see here is really what we do have, an unfilled administrative position.
Okay.
And as far as the rest go, you know, having a very difficult time, you know, putting my finger on where that is, because we have positions that are rolling. For example, an occupational therapist position, we may have one open almost at any given time, depending on what turnover is. TSSU, we had 20 hires, I think, the TSSU rep indicated as well. We just have a lot of rolling openings that we, you know, we have to fill, and here we are at a moment that we may have had a second OT give notice. We've posted, but, you know, it's not like that's a job that we're sitting on not trying to get filled.
All right, let's look at it a different way then. So of these, we know that the 5 interventionist positions are unfilled, right?
Yes. No, the 5 interventionist positions are newly requested.
They're requested, but they're not filled today.
Correct.
And we know on the admin side, there's 11.5 total on this document. We know that 8 are filled, meaning 3.5 vacant. In posted.
No, there's 3 vacant.
3 vacant? Okay.
There's 3 vacant, 2 were requests to restore the deans, which I'll revisit that in the spring. There'll be a new school board in the spring. I do believe we need them. And 1 is the curriculum person that we interviewed and in consultation with the board chose to, ask Christy Michaud to take on additional work. And we chose not to fill that this year She's doing a great job, but she's doing two jobs.
All right, so we'll call it 2.
Yeah.
We'll call it 2. The other one, you know.
2 requested.
Yeah, I want to get to a point where we have a number of posted vacant that,
And so Lee, if you take a step back though, that if you see the unfilled admin, that's a position that's there that is not, we, at this time, are not intending, or not actively seeking to have filled, so that therefore would be an unfilled position.
yeah, I'm basically looking at how many positions do we have where we need people in those roles that aren't filled today? They're posted, they're intended to be filled, but they're not today. We don't have a warm body in a seat doing that function.
If we have the position posted, we have a need for the position.
Yeah, I'm not to the point yet where I'm saying, what are the needs? Because to me, they're all needs.
Oh, sure.
You wouldn't post them if they were, and you wouldn't budget for them if they weren't needs.
Let me oversimplify this. To Lee's point, the 5 interventionists, those are new positions. They're not currently posted and look to fill. And we have 2 dean's positions that are not currently posted or look to fill in the 17-18 school year.
There you go.
So those are the,
Yep.
those are pretty much
Okay.
open and unfilled, and that's how it is for the foreseeable
Exactly.
future.
Right.
So now I'm gonna go up now. TSSU. There's 10 TSSU, layoff 20. How many open, unfilled positions, whether intended or not intended to be filled, do we have today?
You wanna know how many are posted on the website that they're looking for?
Would be 3 or 4. I'm not.
Those are typically,
It's a tough one.
people, they leave in the middle of the year. These aren't people that, so they're posted, they're actually,
It's a
obligations.
revolving,
It's a revolving, I don't
yeah.
like calling it that.
I
You
know,
people's lives
I know,
change, and
it's-
they- But,
Bad choice.
those
choice of
are,
words, but-
most of those are needs that are in current student ed plans. This is why we're, actively pursuing to fill them. So I can comfortably say, are there some that don't have people in them as we speak? Well, I certainly hope right after Christmas vacation that we have
Yeah,
them
it
all
could
filled.
change.
Yeah, because there's needs that aren't being met when you don't fill those.
The TSSU president is here. I mean, she could tell you, what we're asking the people in her particular unit or union to do, which goes well above and beyond what they're contractually obligated to do.
You're just creating more strain when you're doing that. You're not filling the position, you're putting more work on someone else, you're burning them out.
And then more people leave.
And then you're creating that attrition. I get it.
And then on our special education side, if that burden, becomes too much, we may end up having to send someone out of district.
And then
It
there's
costs us more.
greater cost, absolutely. So how many was that?
Could be 3. I mean,
All right, and on the TTA side, how many positions are open, unfilled?
Christie, would you be comfortable, half a dozen, 5, 6?
Sorry, I missed the question. Go ahead.
Open TTA positions that we're currently looking to fill that aren't filled?
I think there are 5.
5, 6, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm saying 6 because the speech, we had a couple of retirements.
Yeah,
Just a
okay.
couple.
That will be openings.
Yeah, so they're not open now.
No, they're not open in the 17, 18.
So-
The ones that, I think Delete's point, he's probably asking, is 2 different questions. What's currently, we have positions like a reading specialist at the high school, a math specialist, a couple of speech and language people, an occupational therapist. So positions that we're looking for in critical shortage areas that we don't currently have. Again, your term, not mine, a warm body in the actual role, although I'd love to have one yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. And these numbers that we just went over, do they include planned additions for next year?
Under new, right? Under new, we have, oh, Lee, they're right here.
Like,
Okay, so I get the new.
yeah, unfilled admin,
Yep.
then the new admin.
I figured he wanted to go through it that way, so I was like, oh, yeah.
Eileen
So
made the suggestion that. That's
So-
where that information is.
Okay, so we have, no.
That's
Okay,
Vertical guy.
thank you.
Not a horizontal guy.
Yeah. Well, to the point, I drew grid lines going vertically on this document. Great, so we have, that gets me my answer, 400,000.
And I should have seen what schedule you were looking at.
It's all right, we took the long road, we got there. We've seen
I
it.
thought you just needed it in that other format. So I
Nope.
was just letting you run with it. I'm
Nope,
like,
just,
okay.
I was just looking for a number. So, all right, great. So of that, roughly 3.7 million, 400,000 are unfilled positions. Okay, that's all I wanted, thank you.
Mrs. Hammond, you had a question?
Yes, I was just wondering, Jeff, under these new positions requested, how many positions are these? I see a number, but do you have any idea of how many specific people? Because over here on budget draft 2 cuts, you list, specific number of people.
So if you look at the vertical page, right, the interventionists, all listed. None of those are positions at this time. And we have, under the new admin, those are the restoration of 2 dean's positions.
Okay. And what about the TTA positions requested?
Those are the interventionists.
Those are the interventionists.
Those are the interventionists. Oh, okay.
We keep referring to those as 5, but it's
4.5.
It's 4.5. It's 5 people, but it's 4.5 FTEs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the spreadsheet or priorities? Okay. Mrs. Hammond, could you go over your working, your thought process and what you were trying to do, present to us?
I will, and I have to apologize. I was trying to rush and get this out to people so they could take a look at it prior to the meeting. So I did kind of send some incomplete information. So if everybody has a copy of that, I just wanted to make a note of, I've got some things listed on the first page, that what should be the first page is the scenario budget. And you'll see an addendum A and B. Addendum A,
Try to put them in order.
I know, well, this is me and my, So addendum A begins at the is the last page that says additional cuts, budget reduction items. And then, addendum B would start at the top, SN, and then it goes down from there. And addendum C is the add back or leave-in page. So basically, I was just sorting through all the information that we've been given during the presentations and everything else, and just trying to get some idea in my mind how things were going. This is in no way, this is kind of like my hoping, to be able to start somewhere for trying to figure out where we want to go with this budget. So the items that are on here are just things that I went through, pulled out, tried to make some reasonable assessments, and items, I did go through the different budgets from the different administrators. I also went through the general ledger that's by account. And basically, all I was looking for is trends for where there are either where people have been putting in, estimating more money than has been expended over the last few years. So some of them are tiny little amounts. Gives you kind of an idea that maybe in some of those cases we could clean those things up a little bit. You might be able to see a minor difference. And then basically I put in addendum C where I added back in different items that you might want to consider, putting back in. So basically, this is more of a working document than anything else. If anybody is having the same mindset as me, that I was trying to see everything in kind of one place. I've been looking at 5 different kinds of reports, trying to get some ideas. So basically, I know Eileen already mentioned that one of these things had already come off, the tree planting. So there could be other things. I welcome any kind of input and just hope that it might be helpful for other people.
Thank you for doing all that.
On,
It's like being at a restaurant, you can pick and choose it.
on sheet A,
A la carte.
the values listed for your operating building services, for example, is that actual values or how much it was reduced? Like, for example, you have natural gas, 50,000. Is that the actual new budget item?
No, that's the amount of the reduction.
That's the amount of reduction. So these are the bottom line here is 685, 938 is a subtotal of reductions.
Correct.
And then on B, the 1,016,000,
That's just a continuation.
and that's the total bottom line.
Yeah,
That's the total amount of reductions.
correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Just a question, actually, Dan, you might be able to help on this. I didn't get to finish watching the entire school board meeting, but my understanding, or part of it anyway, was that there's a significant increase for the pack wall that we're looking at,
Possibly, yes.
like 415 or something
About
like that.
465, I think, was the number that was.
Some heart-stopping number. So,
It was an estimate, by all means. Like,
oh yeah, but there's a pretty big delta.
it
there
is a
between
big. It's a
70
big number,
yeah.
absolutely. But it was an estimate by Tom,
Yep.
just to try to get an idea out there of what it could possibly cost.
Absolutely. I just didn't know where it got, like if we came back around and there was any resolution on anything that was being done on that, because I didn't get to watch the entire meeting.
We're in the process of exploring several things with the manufacturer, installer, warranty. So that's about as much as I can say about that now, but we're
Just fair.
chasing that down.
So I guess my question comes from the perspective of, does it make sense to have 70 in there? Is that the right number? Is it a number that
So-
should be
With that, I mean,
hold or?
well, the problem, he wanted to get a survey? Is that- Survey, what's the word?
Design, engineering?
Architectural design. It's not gonna cost 40 grand for that. It is gonna cost 40 grand for that? There you go. That's why it's in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Hammond, would you like this to be brought up as a formal proposed budget for further discussion?
I don't think so at this time. I did, just wanna point out that this does not take into account the open positions that may be there, and the resultant, if you do have people, I kinda went through with the whole, basing it off of the draft 2 with all the cuts. If we had people not being laid off or jobs dispersed, I know that would change those figures as far as the unemployment and those things. So those were not taken into account. So this is by no means a even closely accurate number. But I think that there is some relevance in looking at the items that are on here, and if people are still kind of trying to figure out where they want to be with this number, it just might be helpful for them to take a look at some of these items.
I actually like the format. Actually, it looks good.
Thank you.
It's the à la carte menu, the restaurant.
It's very well laid out now, but it's just that the numbers are scary.
Have the
Yes, I
special
know,
day.
that's my thoughts too.
You know what I would think would have, this is great to debate all these, pack walls, all that stuff. This is so late in the game to be doing this stuff right now. We should have been doing this 3-4 months ago. And, we just gotta look at this as a bottom line budget at this point. I mean, we're gonna sit here and, take out 40 grand here and stuff, and let's be real, I mean, we're talking, hundreds of thousands at a minimum, millions probably. So let's just go around the room and I would say, tell people where they sit. People have got numbers in their minds, and everybody's been lobbying with everybody, and from here to the public and everything else has been, everybody's gotten data, multiple inputs. So I guess it's time to show everybody their cards, what they want to do.
Yes, sir.
I agree with Mr. O'Neill. Everything that was presented tonight is very valuable. For the last several months, for the last few months, the last several meetings, that's what we've been doing. We've been collecting information, we've gone on facility tours, we've had budget presentations, we've heard it from every single direction. And we've been digesting it since, and this is no time to start reinventing the wheel of how you're gonna go do it. This prioritization list that we saw, I think it's great. When I was reviewing it at home, I use it as a guide. I'm nobody to start picking off positions. I know nothing about them. To Mr. O'Neill's point, to me, it's a bottom line number of what do I think is fair and what do I think the community would support. And all we're really doing is we're gonna come up with a number that we're gonna put on the ballot through a deliberative session that the voters are gonna vote on.
I was originally quite happy with where we were right now with the 69 million. I've had a lot of consideration on this, and I've actually, I like Sue Sherman's motion that actually should have been carried to this board from the school board, which was to raise it up an extra $1 million. And at that time, it would be up to Dr. Metzler and Jeff to figure out where that $1 million should be well spent in there. And it could be a function of administrators, teachers, or a variety of different, other operations of the school district. So with that, I'm gonna actually put out a motion on there for the 70 point, what do we have here is the we've already currently have, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, it's 69.59 or 15, I'll just 59.6. I mean, excuse me, 69.6, so that would be 70.6 million would be my motion. And to have the extra $1 million be dispersed, and that's the mindset.
I'm gonna you made a motion?
Yes, I did.
So I second it for conversation.
What was the number again? I'm sorry.
70.6 million.
Okay, is there any? Yes.
See, seconded. So I'll vote in favor of that. And we started off the conversation, we should go around the room, what's everyone's bottom line number, show your cards. I said it last meeting, I'll say it again, I'm going based off of the feedback I'm getting from my community. And it was a close margin, but not overwhelmingly, the majority of everyone I've heard from said, keep it flat or go lower. So I'm gonna vote in favor of this, and if it doesn't pass, just know, as a representative on this committee, I'm not gonna go above 71.759. That's not my opinion, that's what
I
my
understand,
community's
I've
told
gotten
me.
the same calls myself. It's easy to turn around and, I mean, look, if money was not the resource here, I mean, let's make it $80 million. I mean, we'd all be back home right now with our, respected families. It's, these are hard decisions to make, and they're not fun, and I know that. You know, and I know that there's people out here that are gonna be probably affected by that, and that does bother me. You know, some people think that it's, you know, you're heartless and stuff, and it's no, it just, you can't keep going this. I see it on the flip side of it at a town level. I see people moving out of my town. I have people crying to me because they can't pay their taxes. I see that. People don't see that. I do.
Mr., yes?
I really support the 69.6, we were at before, but I know we have to, you know, give a little, here, but, going forward, if next year the impact on the taxes is gonna be what we think it is, we're gonna be probably looking at a downward trend next year. So we have to start planning it, like the other gentleman said, the union rep, he said you have to do it judiciously and start thinking ahead. So we have to start thinking ahead. So next year, we're not here with a wish list of $75 million. And, you know, and also in that vein too, and the way we go about deriving these numbers, we just have the budgets up, the budgets from each department up. We can look at them and start breaking them down instead of seeing, we wasted a lot of time on this budget, I think, on the presentations. Either we can do the presentation, make them quicker, I don't know how to do it. But when it comes to the meat and bones, we really don't have much time, and we're deliberative right around the corner. So, but, I would support the 71 at this point.
70.6.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I don't support
Lee
71.
was 71. Lee was 71.
So, I'm sorry, 76.
So, I certainly wouldn't go below that. I would say, however, I'm gonna come at it in a slightly different perspective in honoring everything that certainly has been said about folks in all of our communities that are having a hard time. So we have two jobs. And it's summarized in the phrase responsible budget. We owe it to our communities to do our best, and we don't always agree, and that's fine. We have, I believe, a responsibility to recognize the way that the funding, both that's coming in, has changed and will be probably changing going forward. But we also have a responsibility to our future generations, and that's the challenge that we have, obviously, stating the obvious. I won't go below 70.6, but I'm not a fan of that. I actually think we need to be at about closer to 72, because costs don't go down. That's just not the nature of anything. And that's basically where we're at this year, essentially. So that would be my take on it, because I feel like that's reasonable and responsible to everybody as best we can be.
If I could read something that's gonna be in our minutes that we're gonna be approving later tonight. Mr. Miskol inquired about the superintendent's belief of the $69.6 million budget, and Dr. Metzler reiterated he will continue to strategize with the board to create efficiencies, and although not an ideal number, he would work to structure that number with no academic consequences. And now, that's at 69.6. We're potentially gonna be giving, approving another $1 million on top of that. So if that could be done with no academic consequences, then an extra $1 million on top of that is going to alleviate any concern on top of that.
I would ask Dr. Metzler if you'd add any further comments.
Well, I indicated what I thought the ideal number was in several occasions, and I also indicated that we will do the best with what you provide us. So once we have the resources, I will say my proposal was 75.1. That was, and Mr. O'Neill said, it was like, oh, that was everything you needed or wanted, if you would. But I also said I wouldn't have proposed, even your directive of 69.6, I wouldn't have proposed something that I didn't think we could do. So it's not ideal. It would be like playing, apologize for the sports analogy, it's like playing shorthanded hockey. But we're not gonna try to not score a shorthanded goal and still win. We'd be shorthanded. It's not ideal. The additional $1 million is helpful. I agree, if you're asking me, I agree with you. I think in the 72 range is probably the right number, the sweet spot, if you will. But to Mr. O'Neill's point, we will do the best we can with what you provide us.
There's a difference between doing the best you can and telling us, and that's the part that I'm trying to get to, very much to your point. Because if you're telling me at 69 that, hey, no impact on anybody's education. I'm not sure I believe you based on what I've seen, but I'm asking that.
No, I couldn't guarantee you that. What I can tell you is people don't understand, if I look back 5-6 years ago, this district did not have the organizational structure that it needed from an administrative support. The board spent 2 whole meetings talking about what teachers needed for support and how they were going to improve the climate and culture here by supporting teachers. Well, they need support. We have great teachers, and you know that. You're married to one of our best, mind you. Good coach, too, by the way.
Yeah.
Pretty good coach.
Was.
But, that support comes in 2 ways. It comes, the support staff does a great job supporting them, and so does the administrative staff. So, I really believe the infrastructure, the administrative structure that we've put and what we have in terms of rigor, accountability, and evaluation with TILA, that's our Timberlane Executive Leadership Academy, that was designed. I meet monthly with Ryan Richmond and Jen from the TTA, and, I basically said, you tell me what our administrators need to do to get better at what they do. We'll design a leadership academy to make sure they get better, to support you better. That is really what we've been doing. That's Christy Michaud's work in terms of getting them. They go on a retreat, and it's really all focused on what the TTA is asking for. I believe we've designed an excellent school district, we meaning TSSU and unaffiliated and the TTA and certainly the administrative staff and the board support, both school board and budget committee. So how do you do it without any academic impact? You protect the programs, and you ask people, and Lee Dewey put it best earlier when he said you burn them out. You're asking people to do 2 jobs. I'm asking TSSU people to support 2 different, 2 full-time jobs. So
it doesn't have educational impact.
it's immeasurable, though. I'm not.
I just want to make sure that the granularity there is evident.
And I want to be
That's-
fair. I have a hard time making
agree.
declarative statements that are not measurable. I don't know how I measure that damage on the front end, but it certainly will not be. I mean, if we have less resources, we're not going to not strive to do as well as we're doing. I hate saying that we wouldn't be able to do as well as we're doing. Everyone knows the answer to that, and I have a hard time saying it. Because we would work as hard as we could with whatever you provide us to try to stay there. I don't want to take any steps backwards. Everybody here has committed their lives to this profession. Some people have moved here, including my family, to make Timberlane a better place, and hopefully we can continue on that. We've been fortunate, and this community has been tremendously generous. I'm not the least bit. Hey, we're appreciative. We're all very appreciative. We want to continue the work. We want to continue to get better. We want to continue to, and we, what can the taxpayers afford? What's a reasonable number? And I'm with you in the 72 range. I think that's the sweet spot. The 72.8 I thought was where we wouldn't have to make many sacrifices. Once we get south of 72, I believe there are some sacrifices, but I don't know how to measure what the damage would be. A year from now, I could probably, this time next year, I'd be able to tell you, well, this is where we maybe suffered because some of the things we didn't have to provide that kind of support. So I'm sorry for rambling on, but that's my honest, reflection on your question.
Mr. Paul.
Mr. Dowd, can I share in my email between us?
Certainly.
I don't know if you're aware of what I said in an email to Mr. Dowd.
I get briefed on just about everything, so.
I understand that. So the school board basically cannot tell us what to do. However, the wishes of the school board is at $70,599,955.
71.
71 million.
No, that's what it is now,
Oh,
71.
so you even round it up further?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. The number I sent to Mr. Dowd, in my opinion, hits the sweet spot. I'm not disagreeing with the superintendent. I'm not disagreeing with you, Sean. But I've said to various people my feeling, and that is that this is a starting position of that 69 number. And the reason why we came up with that is because collectively, we looked long and hard at trends. And now that I've seen the revenue side, I don't want to take back what I said to Jeff. I think the sweet spot, $71,900,000. That's where I am. That will fully fund everybody. Yeah, there'll be some tough times. Yeah, you may have to reduce certain line items, but it doesn't eliminate anyone. That's where I am.
So I heard that correct, 1.9?
Yes.
I'll meet you there.
Mr. Hughes, did you want to say something?
Yeah, actually, I've been on the same mindset as Lee. And Sean with how he expresses, our taxpayers in town. I mean, Sean and I see it on how we work. Sean sees it on the selectmen's side. I'm in people's homes, providing medical care, and people are trying to figure out how to provide medications for themselves, whether they should take an ambulance because they can't afford the cost of it. And the overwhelming majority of what we got was keep the increases down, keep it level funded. Even going so far as dig deep and cut deep. I don't want to cut deep. I've been on the mindset of staying at the level funded from last year, the 71, 75.
71, yeah.
You know, I've been in the position, when I took this seat last year, I knew I was getting laid off. I knew I was losing my job, and I was wondering how I was going to pay for everything. And one of those is my mortgage. My taxes come out of that every month, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to keep paying for that and where I was going to cut in my own budget for that and who was going to suffer. And I haven't recovered from that, but, you know, luckily, I can shoulder my tax burden. I know people can't. And Mr. Woodward and everybody else that came up and spoke, we're not diminishing your contributions at all. And I don't want you to feel like, you know, we're just seeing you as somebody in a spot, as a number on a paper. You know, I have kids in the school, you know, I know a lot of you here, and you know, my kids have gone through this. I don't want to diminish what they get out of the school and what you contribute to the school. But I also can't continue with the increases in the burden that I've got. And I've seen houses, you know, people in my own neighborhood leave. And I know that they've left because they felt that they couldn't afford their home anymore. And part of that is when people get $400 increases in their tax bill in a month that they weren't anticipating on a fixed income. So I can't support anything over a level funded of last year. I'm on the edge if I would support the 70 proposal that's on the table right now. I'm not sure how I'm gonna go with that. I don't wanna cut too far, but I do wanna keep it level funded, at least. And Mr. Paul's proposal is close to that, but again, I set a cap for myself, and I don't know if I can go over that. Just from the feedback I've gotten from people in my town that are shouldering the burden.
Yes.
I'll give you my 2 cents. So I've, like everybody here, been collecting input over the last several months. For everybody that's in this room, I've heard from both sides. Some strong opponents for it, and some on the other side where they're saying, you know, be frugal with your spending. As I've been developing my number, I was looking at level funding, or even a hair bit less. When I say level funding, I was taking level funding and then actually subtracting out some of the surplus. I'm going to tell you, I would go and support that 70.6, that number. I'd probably go up, I can support a little bit more. Part of my reason for supporting it with confidence, and that this is the part that comes with confidence, is because of this man right here and a lot of our great staff. Because I've known a lot of the staff here for a while. I know a lot of the administration. I know they can be creative. I know they know how to succeed. And they've done it. You've mentioned it with transportation, coming up being creative to, you know, I'll say carpool. So I know it can be done. It'll take work, but I think we can get it done. And I've actually heard, again, from the repercussions of going with these numbers. I think we can still succeed.
Okay, well, I'd like to comment here now.
Julie wants to say something.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to put my 2 cents in while everybody's going around. And I definitely wanted to follow up with agreeing with John. I've got kids in the system. I see the great things that have been done. My kids have been super successful, love school. And in the same token, everybody that I've talked to as a representative for, of my town, all I hear is that, the budget's too high. It's, it's gotta get cut or something. And, so as much as I'd like to be going with maybe a higher number, I really feel that I'm here representing people, so I would have to stay with the level funding at what the budget is currently for this year.
I've been going over this in my own mind, and I think that I have to support a level funding or maybe a little above, closer to the 72. And my rationale for this basically was that when I looked at the 69-6 proposal and the effects of the cuts that would need to be, or reductions that would have to be made, and most of it was in not only people, but it was also in our buildings, our infrastructure. The CIP committee worked hard this last spring in developing a program of proposed projects to keep our aging buildings up. They worked hard they identified some other things such as furniture in the middle school, other factors that were important to the educational things, and all of that would from the list at least going by that would disappear. And to me, that's frankly kicking the can. Yes, we would reduce these things this year, and we would have a reduction, and we could show some kind of a drop in the school portion of this property tax this year. But we push out the projects, and then next board, the next budget committee, will have to figure out with the CIP and with the school board which of these projects we're going to do this time. And they're going to push it out, which I suppose is okay, unless your roof that you pushed out springs a leak. Okay? So I want to go, I would support, I would support a budget that is level funded with this year's budget, because at least some of the CIP would be funded. Administration would identify the most important things, and that would be taken care of. And of course, then there's the people. There's the teachers and the others who do so much for our kids. They would be affected. Certainly, a level-funded budget would force the administration to change the way they do business. But it would at least put a cap, and it would at least be responsible in a sense of meeting some of the responsibilities that need to have to maintain an aging property. We have a high school that's over 50 years old. We have a junior high or a middle school that's 40 years old. The elementaries vary in age from close to 100 in some parts of it to 25 or 30, all of which need to be updated and maintained, not only because they're just simply getting old, but because the programs and the things that have to be taught in these schools has changed. Now, I've been in this town, I've been in this district since '66, and I remember we had machine shops and auto mechanics and other type of skills, vocational skills like that. And now we're talking about computers and robotics. And it's a different, it requires a different set of, different structures, different kinds of classrooms, and they need to invest in that because our kids need to be, our young people need to have that basic background in order to move into the competitive world, and whether it's in college or technical school or military or whatever. And in order to continue it in some way, I feel we need to at least level fund for next year. Yes?
For both you and Julie, can you just define when you say level fund is that 71,759 or
Yes.
that number minus the surplus?
71759.
Okay.
No, I don't diminish the tax burden and the impact on the taxpayers. I'm not trying to minimize that. I'm trying to get a balance between the demand or the need to reduce taxes and the need to provide resources for our children to be educated the way it's been defined in our policies and our policies and our goals and objectives. And when I see a list of cuts like this, and they may be able to work around it, you guys may be able to come up with a way to figure it out. But there's still gonna be a cost. It'd be a cost either indirectly in stuff that can't be measured, or there'd be as well as a cost in future expense down the line, where we encumber another board that hasn't, instead of having to pay $500,000 to do a roof job, we now have to pay $750 because we pushed it out. Or we have, worse yet, we have to pay $750 and do it immediately because it leaks, because we pushed it out. So, yes.
So we have a motion on the table, and that was based off of the school board.
School board's recommendation.
The school board's 71.
Dan has said the school board has.
If you, as I said, the recommendation by the school board at the library before they came here, which you, Dan, didn't support that. That was the number that came on out of the recommendation of them, was $1 million increase. And that was not brought to the table here. I want to honor that. That was a fair number to go up. It was a compromise. Even Sue even said that. Sue said that, and Greg Sparrow said, he even complimented about compromising on that, coming on up. Because Mr. Bealo's article also failed, which was what Dan supported at the school board, and that was at that meeting in the library prior to ours last meeting.
Sean, I think, with all due respect, I think you're merging two conversations, because the back end of that happened at the end of the last school board meeting with Sue and Greg. That was the compromise, and that was the 71 that Dan talked about.
Sue made the motion to increase it $1 million, and Greg made a comment about the compromise on that, and that was at the library.
That was the December 7th meeting.
No, but they did it again here at the last meeting.
I know that.
Oh, okay, it sounded like that was the exact same way that it played out in the library? I don't know. Well, you were there too, so. I know they added $1 million, I'm not suggesting that, I just know they had a second conversation that sounded very much like the first.
That's why if you recall, when I was asked here, when we were prioritizing it, I had asked that if Jeff could turn around, and as you're prioritizing, not knowing that everything of 80% was gonna be in a priority one category, is that as you're prioritizing up, can you turn around and let us know when you get to that $1 million mark that the school board had recommended, an hour and a half prior to this, so that we could at least see that point, and then that's the stuff that they would be added on top of that.
Do you have anything?
The school board asked for him to bring a budget back to the school board with another $1 million in. You can go back and watch it, you can look at the minutes, it all says that. It's not a number that they were supporting, they were still at 69. They wanted to see what 70 and change looked like. That's what happened. It wasn't, hey, this is our number, because as we stated at the beginning of our last meeting, our number was still 69. And now our number is 71, the school board's number.
You're saying at 69, you were saying that your position previously was that there was never a vote at the school board for
It's
that.
at 69.
That was originally, yes, I would agree that was it, but previously.
Now it's 71.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's
Okay.
71 now.
So, what's your motion?
The one that I've made, which was 70.6.
70.6.
Which was the increase of $1 million onto
There's
the
been a second.
69.6.
And there's been a second. Okay. I make a motion to amend that number to 71,600, which is basically this level funded for this year.
You'd be shorting at 159,000.
Was it 7?
71759,415.
All right, that number. 71.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion on this? What I'd like to do on these votes on this budget, from the budget, this point forward, is to vote by polling. By starting each member voice his vote, yea or nay, just going around the table, rather than by hands.
Okay, before you call the vote, can you reread the motion?
Yes, please reread the motion.
Well, it's amendment to the motion.
The amended motion.
The amendment.
Motion to approve a $71,759,415 final 18-19 proposed budget bottom line.
That sound all right to everybody? As read?
What was the number again? 71?
And not the number, but the way it's read, is that okay, the way?
I'd like to have it
Cleaner?
state move forward to public hearing.
So,
good point.
All right.
No, it's on the amendment anyway, so.
Yeah.
I'll revise,
I'll add an amendment after.
I'll
we vote.
restate the.
No, I think you're good. I think you're good.
I'm all right?
Yeah, you're
Oh,
good.
okay.
We'll amend it after.
Okay. All right. So, Katrina, could you call the roll for a vote, please?
Mr. David?
No.
Mrs. Doobie?
Yes.
Mr. Doobie?
Yes.
Mr. Gurns?
Yes.
Mr. Guide?
I abstain.
Mrs. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mascola?
No.
Mr. O'Neill?
Nay.
Mr. Paul?
Abstain.
motion passes.
What was the final?
5-3-2.
I'd like to further amend the motion to include the language, move forward to public hearing.
Second.
All right.
Pull them again?
Poll again, please.
Mr. David?
Yeah, I guess at this point, I will forward.
Mrs. Doobie?
Yes.
Mr. Doobie?
Yes.
Mr. Gurns?
Yes.
Mr. Guide?
Yes.
Mrs. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mascola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Okay.
That was for the amendment, that wasn't the budget.
I know.
Okay.
What's next?
Now we have to
Now you gotta vote on
vote
the
on the
budget.
final motion.
Now we gotta vote on the final budget. Okay, we will call a poll on the final budget. Can you read the budget as amended? The motion as amended.
Motion to approve a $71,759,415 final 18-19 proposed budget bottom line for consideration at public hearing.
Okay.
I thought we just voted on it, no?
No, that was the amendment to add,
To add the
me being
language
picky, adding
for
public hearing.
Okay, so was she just read the same thing again?
Yeah, so the initial motion was to approve the $70 million budget.
Then we're gonna
Then
go
David
forward.
amended it for the dollar amount.
Right.
We approved the dollar amount, then I amended it to add in the
go
language
forward.
public hearing.
So now we're,
Now we're voting on this is our last vote on this.
Okay, good, because I'm
Ma-
confused.
Hopefully.
Mr. David?
Wait, are we gonna have some discussion on that?
yeah, go ahead.
So we basically increased this from 69.6 to 71.75, which is about a $2.2 million increase. We, as we were just talking about, the direct assessment portion of that was going to go from 50 million in 16 and 17 school year, then it's gonna jump to, by 3 million, it's gonna be 53 million, and we're gonna be it'd be,
It's a $918,000 increase over what's projected for 17-18.
Which is conservative.
I did the math already.
53.9, so it's gonna be an extra $1 million on top of what we've already know that it's gonna be a 3 million. So it's basically gonna be a $4 million hit from what we paid this fall.
Or half of what you're accustomed to.
Pardon?
Because it's normally 2 million. It's less, he's saying it comes out to 900 and something thousand, so it's, if that usually goes up 2 million on the average. Slow it down.
Yeah, but it's the part that the assessment,
No, I understand that whole thing. Right.
Yeah, which is gonna
It's not more
compound
than
the
2
problem.
million. I mean, it's
going up.
I'm just making sure that everybody's well aware of all the impact that we're gonna be facing with this.
Like I already mentioned, it's gonna be, we're gonna have the same, we're gonna be on the same next year. And he has to be sensitive to the fact, we have to start looking at that and being sensitive to it, keep saying, keep ignoring the fact the population's going down, the state reimbursement's going down, keep going up. We can't keep doing that. I mean,
I agree.
I
The
just,
saving, sorry.
go ahead. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's all I'm looking at. That's the only barometer I have.
I'm with you. That's my fear too. I think the saving grace here is, as Attorney Dowd said, he's conservative on his income budget.
Okay.
You know,
so-
we know we're at probably at a run rate of about $300,000 to $400,000 initial in surplus.
So based on that, what would you consider, what do you think the district acceptance is gonna be?
All right, so
On what we've just passed,
on what we just passed, I think we're gonna
Oh,
come
we
out
haven't really-
around 700,000. So 53.7, call it.
okay, so now if the unassigned funds are up, correct? Is that what you're saying? They're gonna- that these are
Yeah, so bring
this
your,
is
bring your
conservative?
unassigned funds to
That's a
about
low number,
1.8,
Alan.
1.9.
The 1.5's low, in my
So
opinion.
400,000, so we're down at, we're 50, basically 53.2, 53.1.
No, I think it's gonna, no, I think it's gonna end up being around 53.6, 53.7.
Okay, even.
Once
even-
you include that increase.
Okay.
If you don't include that, tentative increase, you're at
I mean,
53.9.
If, I'm gonna say this, if the appetite for the vote, for the taxpayers is the 52.9 is okay, that increase, I don't think would be an issue. But I think we're gonna, I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news, I'm just saying, what we've already, with the 50,000, or the 50, whatever the number we just faced, we had a backlash, we had people saying they're losing their homes, so now, if they can support that's, I mean, up to another $100,000, I mean, that's, to me, that's reasonable, that's being fiscally conservative, and being realistic. Keeping in mind, the reimbursement state keeps going down, populations keep going down, we have to be aware of that, and we have to plan for that. So we can't, we're not gonna be has to be done. You know,
Well, I think a level funded.
painless as possible, I guess
know.
I'm saying.
Well,
I know,
I think a level funded budget is a good first step.
I think so. I mean, as long as, like I said, as long as the taxpayers can afford it, I'm okay with it. But I'm just telling you, the temperature I got from the people I'm talking to is it's unsustainable, and they can't afford it. So whether that's the case, we're gonna find out next year when the new tax bill comes out. And if it's not a backlash and everything's fine, but I think there's gonna be a backlash, I do, but what do I know? Just a regular guy.
Any other discussion? Like to call a vote by roll?
Mr. David?
I'm not really sure what I'm voting on. Yes, we're going.
Well, what's the motion?
We probably should know. We should probably be sure.
Should probably reread it.
Motion to approve a $71,759,415 budget, final 18-19 proposed
For public hearing.
budget bottom line for consideration at the public hearing.
Yay.
Mrs. Doobie?
Yes.
Mr. Doobie?
Yes.
Mr. Gerns?
Yes.
Mr. Guide?
Abstain?
Mrs. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mascola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Nay.
Mr. Paul?
Yay.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to cancel the scheduled Budget Committee meeting of December 28th.
Second.
well, that we glue by hands. All in favor?
Hold on, hold on.
Yep.
Is there any reason that we might possibly need it?
We just put a final number forward. We moved it to public hearing.
No, I understand.
Maybe if Santa wasn't good to you?
I'll consider my arguments to go down if you want to continue.
You know, nothing in the parking lot. I don't foresee any new business coming up at this
I mean, if
juncture.
there's an emergency, we'll call an
Yeah.
emergency meeting. There's nothing stopping us from doing that.
Okay. Any other, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, so
Let's see you
this
next
will
year.
be brought up at a public hearing, which will be on Thursday, January 11th at the PAC. We will meet after that meeting to review this budget one last time based on the feedback and the comments we got from public hearing.
And
They-
I'll keep my well-rested financial officer here tonight to put together a draft 3 with your number. He said, no, he's got a place to go.
So there'll be another line item budget
I'm gonna let him go
available
home.
for review before public hearing.
Do we have any warrant articles that have been
Well,
put forward?
the board is considering the one that you sent to them about the fiber, right? And they haven't written it yet, correct?
No, it hasn't been written.
They haven't?
We haven't talked about warrant articles yet.
Fine, we'll see it.
He's here, but it was very, very brief, if anything.
So if I may, Mr.
Because there
Chairman.
needs to be a recommendation or not,
But we did that.
By-
I've already told them that they've
not by
recommended.
school board, but by this committee here.
So,
Yeah,
And,
we did.
no.
no, we did.
For the
The
fiber?
budget committee needs to recommend it.
Hold on, if I may.
Yes.
After that public hearing, we meet immediately after that
To go over warrant articles.
to go over those warrant articles.
Right. Oh, okay, I see what
So
you're
as of
saying.
right now,
Yeah, yeah,
The public hearing would also include discussion of those warrant articles as well, and there should be a recommendation before it hits the floor by this board,
For deliberative.
for the public hearing.
In
I think
past years, the public
Yeah, the
hearing's been the
proposed.
school board's opportunity to present the proposed warrant articles to us. Language may change at the public
I agree,
hearing.
the main.
And then we make
That
our
night,
recommendation
yeah.
on it, after they've been finalized, to move forward.
No, I disagree with you, but that's fine.
Can I ask Mr. O'Neill a question?
Yes.
I think I'm understanding what you're saying, and I'm not sure everybody's getting, like, your recommendation is to whether or not to have any money warrant articles, correct?
No, if there's a money warrant article, the budget committee has to have a recommendation on there.
Oh, yeah, no, I knew that.
And that has, and that's before it hits the
Public hearing.
public hearing. We don't have any more time, we just
Well,
got
this-
rid of that, so then, unless we're gonna open up the meeting prior to that, vote on it, then turn around and add it, which then, you've gotta post these ahead of time.
There's some debate on when you're supposed to put your recommendations on them. Because sometimes they were on before the public hearing, and you could only change your vote if you made a change at the deliberative, correct?
Correct. If anything changes in the warrant article, the respective committees, because there also is a school board vote, would also have an opportunity to, you know, update a new
Update
recommendation, because something changed now.
I think a lot of districts are not putting, correct me if I'm wrong, they're not putting recommendations on at all at the public hearing, they're waiting until the deliberative session. But I know you
They could
disagree
do
with that.
that, but it's
Yeah.
it's against what I believe is what the law is, but that's a,
So, at your pleasure, what you guys wanna do?
I mean, we don't have a warrant article to even discuss if we wanted to.
They still have to work on the language,
Yeah, we haven't worked on the language
which I
or
think
anything.
they're gonna do on the 21st. The language on that one anyway, and I don't know if there's any additional ones.
No, there was none other presented.
Just that one.
Really?
Right now.
Are you okay with that?
Might wanna build some
Yep.
tennis courts or something.
I'm up for following what the law says,
Oh, I
so,
know.
I'm up, my opinion is that we should have these and vote on them at a meeting, and then they have to be posted prior to the,
You want them on the public hearing?
there's have to be at the public hearing, and then there's a posting of that prior to that, so it's like, I mean, we're very late in the game, and for warrant articles, and that's why I'm thinking if we have these warrant articles, and we don't get them, and because we got this meeting canceled, we're not gonna have an opportunity to put,
Do you wanna meet before the, well, obviously it has to be all printed, I get it, no.
Yeah, we haven't even,
I didn't know if you wanted to
there's
meet
no language right now at all.
Yeah, we meet before the deliberate.
an hour before.
but then I would think that you'd
But
be
then
violating the
but you don't do
posting.
the public, you can't get out to the public.
Got it, yeah, because it has to be posted 24
Right.
hours.
Needs to be posted.
No, a week.
It's not even, it's a week ahead of time.
But we have no language whatsoever written right now.
I know.
So,
Right, 7 business days, correct?
Yeah.
So it's really, it's like, in order to do it,
The,
you got 10 days.
one thing we still have to,
And they may not do it.
I make a motion to
understand, but I'm
approve the
telling you
minutes
is
as written.
That's the backlog of the
Okay.
timeline.
Yes.
we have to, yes,
Would you like to dismiss your staff since the bottom line of the budget is finished, so we can go on?
Take a 5-minute recess.
They can stay as long as they'd like.
yes, let's take we've got a little bit of work to do, but
All right, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. How's that?
Just given,
we'll resume at 9. Good.
Because he can,
Oh, I know. All right,
you need to follow to order.
call to order.
If it was.
The first, next item is to review the minutes of the meeting of, Budget Committee meeting on November 30.
I get you, I hear you.
I stand by my motion from earlier.
There was a motion put on earlier to accept the minutes as presented. Is there a second? Any discussion? Want to review quickly? Shall we move to a vote? Yes.
I would like to compliment the person that takes these awesome notes.
I second that.
Now we can applaud.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes as presented? Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm abstaining, just because I wasn't here for the beginning portion of the meeting.
Okay.
So two.
Yeah, two. Me too.
Yeah, one abstention.
Two abstentions.
Two abstentions. Is there any new business to come before this committee? Seeing none. Administrative reports, in addition to what we did before? Nope, good. Any reports from budget committee members, other than what we've just discussed? Yes?
Just the facilities. Strategic planning is ongoing, and the next steps will be for focus groups to be put together for the 3 main goals that came out of the sessions with Jay Voigt. One of them's academics, second one, I'm going to briefly just say academics, facilities, and culture and climate were the three. And those three focus groups, hopefully we'll get some more info on how they want to drill down to do some of the, put some of the objectives on the board that can be measured as far as improvement in the district.
Was that, is that rated in order?
Excuse me?
Was that rated in order?
No.
Academics,
We don't,
facilities?
no, we didn't rank order any of it.
Okay.
To do it properly, you can't really say one's more important than the other because they all basically have the same thread, district improvement.
Right.
So if you break it down, those are the three overarching goals. And under those goals, there's probably going to be, like, just as a guesstimate, academically, we'll probably have one just under the STEAM initiative, for example, or the technology integration initiative that's ongoing on how we're getting Chromebooks into the hands of the kids. So that's how I see it. It may change, those objectives may not be what I just described, I don't know. It'll be based on the community and facilitating leaders.
Okay.
Some of the recommendations, for example, under facilities, being around here as long as I have, I really hope that Mr. Busby will be part of that facilities group to
Makes
help
sense.
facilitate
Yeah.
the needs that people see, because we can't see everything. So you want everybody's input from the community. That will then delineate the objectives.
Great.
Okay. Any other reports? Yes.
Oh, reports, no.
The school board rep, Mr. Dow, any?
No, we got it.
You got it, okay. Any other business to come before this committee? Yes.
I'd like just a quick conversation, not to come up with a solution, but for next year's budget process. I believe there's a much better way to get our end number. I'm going to share just some quick thoughts that I think we can do to be more efficient with our time. The school facility tours are great, but unless we get a better representation from our board there, I say don't do them. If we only have 2 or 3 members out of 9 going to a building, we've just lost an entire night for 2 or 3 members. It's like holding a meeting. That'd be number one. I think Alan said this earlier, the budget presentations, I don't know, maybe we just need to get more of a summary. Instead of doing over 3 different nights is what we did, I think.
More than that. Do you remember in the past, we had one night at the PAC?
Okay.
Usually the school board and budget committee.
Either way,
Okay.
shrink that down. We need less time in the field of facilities. We need to hear the presentations, but summarize them. And then when we get into the meat, which we really didn't do here for the last 2 meetings, we need to come with a better approach. So again, I don't care if we're going to start at what we expended last year and go up, if we're going to go from a wish list type number and come down, if we're going to go from the east and head west, but we need a better approach. And so I don't know when this board, and somebody might just say, well, the board's changing. Fine, then take the experienced members who might be leaving, whoever's leaving, and come up with a new approach for those new people coming on. But not the best way to spend our budget process.
Can I 100% agree? So one thing actually I was saying at our break, I'd love to see us do what I call a plus delta, what worked, what didn't work, and some of those, with whoever would want to be involved, I'd be happy to try to work with people on coming up with another flow, because we also are going to have the strategic plan coming through. That needs to be tied together with the capital improvement plan, which I'd like to see that be one integrated process, all in one. So I agree 100%. I think there can be a suggested process to the next board. They can take it or leave it, change it or whatever, but at least there'd be something there they could start with.
And then, I'm just giving my last piece. So,
I'm sorry if I cut you off. I didn't
Nope.
mean to.
So thank you to both of you, I mean Jeff, for putting up with us and then getting us all of our stuff, even though we didn't always communicate, you know, we asked you for this, and so thank you for all your efforts. They're greatly appreciated. But I was going to say, the other part I think we would help is sometimes the numbers, this is what I find, is when we get like the summary, you know, year expended for the different years, and you go like, oh, well, it's expended plus or minus something else. Put us into the layman terms. We are not the business administrator of the district. We don't do this full time. So if I see a number that says total, I'm thinking total. And so I guess my point is sometimes when we get presenters, strip out the acronyms so it's easy to understand. It's just whenever we get stuff, just layman terms. If that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but you did a great job.
Thank you.
If I could comment, I think the opportunity to really, I like your suggestions. And I think the opportunity to begin to implement that will be in April when we do our organizational meeting and we do the review of the rule of our, the way we do
Bylaws.
business. And that would be the time to really kind of scope out that and plan it. And that would give the board an opportunity to maybe get a head start so we don't start. I felt that frankly, the September 14th date was a late start. We could have gone later. And not having that, and having the issue of the tours, if that in fact goes away, will give us more time as well. So I'd like what you.
Let me just have one more he's been up his hand up.
Michael, being one of the newest members here, I charge you with that during the reorganizational meeting.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I do. Because
Okay.
you'll be here.
I would actually agree with the presentations and the facilities tour. I mean, those are prime time that we get allocated, that we could be doing other things. What I see is a difference from what I've done in the town, is we start out at a zero-based budgeting, and we build it up from there. And what that means is you're gonna, and what I would wanna do is see a big data dump. We turn around and, I mean, this software that Jeff uses could easily turn around, 7.1, 7.2, it can turn around, and you're pretty much gonna close down the year. You know, you could turn around and print all those line items up, and you can start to go down in each one of the line items, and it's just like what we do. Your fire department, the police department, we build on up, equipment, and what's the equipment that they're looking to purchase, you know, and you go down in that, and you can look at that. You know, this is the stuff that this needs to be updated. All those kind of stuff gets built on and up, and then you turn around and you end up building up the police department's budget. It's different than we would do here for the different line items that we have in there. But you build it on up from that, and then we get to turn around and we look at it, and then we turn around, and then at the PAC, for example, we could turn around and debate at that time the money when we're talking about the PAC. We get here, and at the end, what we did is, you know, I mean, I don't need to replay exactly what happened, but we, you know, you're just throwing around numbers in a big, you know, matrix.
It's a different process too, because at the town level, each department is building their budget. They bring it to the selectmen, which would be the school board equivalent, and it gets vetted through them before the budget committee even sees that. You know, so here we spend a lot of time saying, well, what does the school board want? You know, we meet with the school board to find out what they're looking for, and, you know, so we have a lot of that. Whereas at the town level, you know, they don't have to say, well, what are the selectmen looking at doing? What are they looking at for warrant articles and things like that? Because they're seeing everything before even it gets to the budget committee, and they're vetting it that way. So it's a little different from what we're used to when we're building our town budgets. And we seem to lose some of that, you know, because we're like, well, what does the school board want? And even tonight, well, the school board put their number up different. Before it was lower, so we're discussing what, you know, and it seems like there's a lot of back and forth and changes on both sides, and neither one of us are agreeing on those changes. You know, so I think there is, you know, some changes that can be done in this process, definitely, how it's done and, you know, savings.
Is there, so I'm just envisioning this board, you know, finds itself again in the spring, It'd almost be good if, so the school board association supports the school board. If we can get like maybe a 1 hour overview of, for everybody at the board, how we're going to go approach what we're going to go do. Look, I mean, everybody can come up with their idea, but what I don't wanna do in April is, you know, Sean say, I wanna go do it this way, and then, you know, Julie says, no, well, I wanna go do it this way, and
Break and show up in September, you have nothing.
so we're getting anywhere. So hopefully, there's gotta be a directive that every school, budget committee in this state is following. I mean, I'm sure we're all doing it differently, but there's gotta be,
We already pay into it, it's the same thing.
paying to what?
The
School Boards Association.
School Board Association, it's the same thing.
But do they provide guidance
Yeah.
on, okay.
Yep, they do.
See, the one thing, it's, local control, so everybody does it just a little bit different. They do it how they wanna do it.
And they'll provide guidance, but they're not gonna give you a line
listen.
in the sand,
No, no, no,
because
no,
they're gonna be
no,
like,
no.
it's up to you guys.
Guidance, though.
They will,
If they can give you just a quick overview of guidance.
they will. You can have them come down here, they do, things that you can go meet with them in, I think it's Manchester, they have, you know,
Or we could have them here.
seminars, well, that's what I mean, or they can come down here, and, they can do that.
They will delineate, though, what the budget committee does versus what the school board does. You know, we got a little bit of peanut butter in your chocolate, my chocolate in your peanut butter, you know, that was really what confused some of the process, I think.
Mr. Paul?
I pointed something out to Dr. Metzler at the break, and I'm not going to repeat it, except to say that there's a degree of confidentiality that needs to be upheld, and that's between Dr. Metzler and Mr. Dowd. Beyond that, the way that the cuts are presented versus increases or decreases, I think you got to be very careful, because the people watching on film or on TV are more confused with the hyperbole than what is it actually going to affect. I think that's going to be a basis for the budget committee. I won't be here. I'm a short-termer. I was appointed. I'll be done in March. I will give you a little piece of advice that a superintendent from Plymouth gave me in a class. It happened to be for finance. And the lady in the back of the room and I took the same class. We had to design our own school. We had to do our own budget. We had to figure out FICA, salaries. We had to prove our hypothesis. That's what the citizens of this district deserve. Transparency. That's my piece of advice to you folks. Everything has to be on the up and up. But there are pieces that, quite frankly, should not be, how should I say, verbally exchanged, whether it's a school board or this committee, when it comes to personnel, because that can be very damaging and put a wedge between our citizens who are going to vote for the budgets.
I agree 100%. Tonight, we're even talking about personnel in our meeting. And I'm going like, what are we doing? Here's what I think we should do. You can take all that data from all of our printouts, go home, analyze your data. If you want to make, if you think we need personnel cuts, go do them. But the bottom line is, we're coming here with a bottom line. We don't discuss anything about people. You might say, I think we got too much staff, but when we start going down like this many FTEs over here, we're wasting our time. Completely wasting our time. You can think about it at home to derive your number, but when you get them here, keep the word employee out of your vocabulary.
But then how do you rationale that when you turn around and ask, well, how did you, approach this? How did you come to that number? And then you're going to have to get into that.
You might have to say, I think we have, X amount of staff too many. But when we start labeling,
Right.
who am I to say a para, a teacher, administrator, a janitor, anybody?
Right.
We don't know. There's very few people in the district that know. I'll start with these two right here. So I think all we can do is say, look, if we think we got too many of a certain type of employee, we say we got too many. They got to figure out where to make the
You're
cuts.
saying it's damaging if you pinpoint it within the staff.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes it harder for him to manage, and it drives it.
That was the point I brought up at the school board. I
Right.
said, you're having an impact on the climate and culture,
I
and it's
get
not a
that.
positive one.
Right. But they, not to the point where I believe at the point that we have to, I mean, I don't want to mention it, but you know where I stand.
No, yeah, no.
And so I don't want to keep mentioning it, but we have to go that route, but like at his point, mentioning, breaking it down, I don't think we need to go there.
Yeah, but then how do you, you're gonna take the data and you're gonna bring it home, right? And you're gonna formulate a number in your own mind. That's gonna lead to certain assumptions being made. Okay, so let's play a scenario out. I have a number, it includes X amount of staff. I say, well, I'm gonna assume all 20 staff are vacant. That could lead to a huge discrepancy in a number that I formulate and potentially present to this committee for consideration.
Lee, I want to follow up on that. The word we're all pondering here is the word trust. Do you trust Dr. Metzler to meet with the school board, bring forth a manifest for the number of staff he needs for the next year? That's their bailiwick. It should not be the budget committee's bailiwick. Our job is to look at the numbers given and come down to a bottom line, which we did this evening. I said it 3 meetings ago. We shouldn't be talking about personnel. That's their job. Period.
I
We have to
agree.
look at the bottom line.
I agree, but to that same token, then we shouldn't concern ourselves with supplies. They can manage their own supplies. We shouldn't concern ourselves with technology, and I'm not trying to pick on staff,
No,
absolutely.
but there's a little bit different.
It's a difference.
You can tell us, you know, you want to buy this many crayons, this many pencils, so we have an understanding. But when we come here, look, supplies are not personal. Staff is personal.
Right, agreed.
So they can go put down and itemize down to a sheet of paper. And if you think they go through too much paper, you make a decision on it. But, yeah, they still need to break down everything else.
See, this is the issue that we have, is because we have a declining student population. Prior to 2007, you come here in 2000 through the 2007-8 timeframe, it was going the opposite way.
Right.
It wasn't a discussion. It was like, hey, we're going to be having to add staff because we have these students and we have to turn around and get to the next level. So
When we were adding-
it's a question of, and this is of course my viewpoint. As we turned around and we approached that peak, we started going down. And I understand that, you know, just because you remove 20 students, it isn't equivalent to a teacher, you know, because they're all spread on out. But the number is 1,100 students. We can easily figure out that that's spread on out distribution-wise throughout the school district. That has a certain head count. And we have to turn around and, I mean, those are salaries and that affect all this stuff. And we know that the state's money follows the student. You know, they're turning around now. The H-bills coming through the State House with the charter schools now, it's going to follow them.
Right.
Right there. So you think this problem is even worse? I mean, I know you're going to be on top of that, Dr. Metzler, because you're going to just see all the students, because I know right now that that money comes right here to this district, even if they go to a charter school. Now it's going to turn around and switch.
You're talking about SB 193,
It's gonna fall
I think
through.
that is the number, come to think of it.
It is, it's SB 193.
January,
It's gonna,
early January, I think they're voting.
But it's not the budget committee's job to cut staff, or say they have too much staff, or say they have too little. It is not the
It's a-
budget
it's-
committee's job. It's not their job.
You can say that's not our job, and I agree. We're not going to turn around and do that. But the funding of that, when you turn around, we try to turn around and you try to find data points and metrics. You look at other districts and you turn around and, I mean, we're always trying to grab data and find things that justify this stuff. I mean, if Dr. Metzler came in here, and I'm not saying you would ever do this, come in here, I want to hire 100, teachers to do something like that, and it's, $8 million. Do you think this committee is going to turn around and say, yes, we agree with that?
Sean, first thing is, he wouldn't come to us first. That should be a bailiwick for the school board and him first. I hate to say it, but that's where that should start.
Okay.
Because
if-
they're writing the policy.
If the school board and that supported that, you come in here and say, could we turn around and absorb, and I'm just pulling out the number, $8 million.
I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No,
I understand the point you're trying to make. But as far as the job, the way I read it the first time I got the folder, our job is to build a bottom line of a budget. How we decide to go about it, which goes to Mike's point, you have to be careful. This is just me. You have to be careful when you start crossing over into school board territory. That's what muddies the waters. The school board can give us guidance. They can even give us a number. The last time they were here, they gave us a number. Did we vote on it? No, we didn't right away. We still wanted to go home and sleep on it. We were given a directive by our chairman to go ahead and look at the paperwork and the numbers and whatever. I mean, I shared with Jeff my personal opinion after I got to my bottom line number. You know, that's just because of, maybe it's because of my school background. I got to that number knowing that that's about as low as you can go for, without wiggle room, knowing what we know. Now, if there's something hidden that I don't know about, which is where you're coming from, I don't know. I know where you want to go with it.
I mean,
So just as a consideration for some of these things, and it is more in the school board's bailiwick with the resources, but I would hope that part of the strategic planning process is going to be looking at, in some segment, even if it's not with the community boards, but there should be a piece of that which is really looking at how are we approaching the declining enrollment relative to what's the plan of action, and that theoretically should be part of that. And then you can actually start to do these kind of 5-year budget guesses, but you can start to do some of that so that hopefully you're not going, what? How did that happen? So in theory, that should be part of it. I don't know if that's what's envisioned right now, but, you know, your points are 100%, you know, we have to find a way to make this make sense, and it can't just be random.
Well, I think
Obviously.
to the point of, you know, when you look at and we compare ourselves to yesteryear and now, you know, and I can tell you that we were not staffed correctly administratively when I came here. We were not. I came from a district that I believe had an adequate, or had the kind of organizational structure. It takes 3 to 5 years to root an organizational structure, one where evaluation is truly taking place. I mean, how many teachers do you think was realistic for one person to have to evaluate? 50? 30? 20? To do it right? We're not close. You know, you have departments of 12 to 15. You know, think about it. If you had 50 people you had to evaluate, well, you see them every third, fourth day. They see them three times a year, and that's it. You know, it's a lot of work to do it correctly. So what do districts do that don't do it correctly? They don't evaluate. So you have no evaluations. And there goes accountability, and there goes rigor, and there goes support. So, you know, we built, and I know it looks like a lot more, but we built, I believe, an organizational structure, school board driven in a sense, like drive achievement. We're not worried about building a $200 million high school right now. We need to drive the numbers, and I believe that we have driven achievement, and we will continue to. But it does take a while to root, to have an executive leadership academy, listen to TTA. What do you need for support? Does the staff that we have in place have the proper tools? Do they need training? Just because you hire someone because they were a great teacher to be an assistant principal, it's a different skill set. You know, they need to learn how to evaluate. They need to learn how to manage the student discipline. They need to learn how to manage some of the SPED things. And I don't want to turn this into a soapbox, but you know, we built that organizational structure. Now, can we make some small sacrifices to make these numbers work? Yes, but to dig really deep in it, to say, oh, you have too many, get rid of a third of them, that's just crazy talk. I'm telling you, I know that would definitely have an impact on student achievement. And I don't believe we're ever going to get there. I didn't really believe we were going to get there. I felt like the 69.6 was an extreme move in the other direction, and there had to be some way that was reasonable and responsible. I believe you did that work. You know, is that the perfect number? Oh, we'll find out. We'll find out. But I appreciate how much work you put in. You know, whatever the criticisms may or may not be, they can't criticize you for not doing the work. You've all done a ton of work looking at things. You all have strong opinions and feelings about. To Mr. Paul's point, I mean, or to Mr. Mascola's point, how do we get to the numbers without actually having discussions about the lion's share of the budget? That's tricky. It's 80% without identifying people. I did caution you when you threw out the 69.6. I go, you're not going to like it, and you're going to call it a scare tactic. It really wasn't a scare tactic. It was one way of looking at how to do that. And to Mr. O'Neill's point, I'm going to give you what I think is the best way to do it with the resources you give us, and then we'll see where we are a year from now. But again, I thank you on behalf of everybody who was here. You know, there were teachers here, paras here, administrators here, parents, community members. You know, you spent a lot of time, and the process can be refined, and we'll refine it. We'll help you with that. Certainly, Mr. Attorney Dowd will do everything and anything you need. If you need personal, private meetings with them, come in and see him. Some of you do. You know, whatever we can do to make it work for you guys. It's your process that we need to assist. We're not trying to change your process, I guess, right? So,
One of the things that I thought that was really interesting in starting to do my homework of looking at other districts is the depth of data that they produced. I mean, I was over on Nashua's, website, and I was just astounded how much data they had. They had a 500-page document where you could go through and you could see the utilizations of classes. I know this has been a topic about, student enrollment in classes. I mean, they had all their classes in there, and they turned around and they had it, where it would turn around and say, a chemistry class, an AP chemistry class, they have, 3 sections in there, and they got, 20, 21, 22. And it was just multiple pages of all their classes, and that's just one section of it. And then it went in on the justifications for their budget of an in-depth, why they wanted and needed. So you could turn around and, over time with this document, you could really parse a lot of the needs and justifications for all these different things. It's something to look at, and I would think.
all the districts are a little bit different, and I hear from the woman that is the TTA lawyer. She says that we have more online than most districts. We have a ton online. I mean, I have people complaining about organizational charts that are online. They don't even look. They just complain that they're not there. Go to the school.
You hide them all.
Yeah. Under staff. I hid the organizational chart under staff. Go to staff, organizational chart, click, boom, there it is. District 1 is, and the school board has a District 1. I know, I spoke to Kathy Belcher today about that. I said, you have a reporting chart? It's like this huge chart with all these lines going all these different places, and they have that. So, to your point, I mean, everybody wants something different, so you have, Nashua does it one way, Manchester does it a different way, Timberlane has theirs, Wyndham does it their way. We're looking at policies, procedures, practices.
I know we're talking about a lot of this stuff, but, sometimes I like to turn around and look at an approach and just stop where you are, take a step back, not like last year, 5, 10 years ago, and where we were. There's a lot of people that have made a lot of gripes of a lot of things, but just to show you right there, we wouldn't have that camera right on over there if a couple people in our district weren't vocal enough about getting that.
Right?
The next thing now is the website. Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I was before I was here.
Yep, no, it was. So a lot of things have transpired over the years, and, I'll turn around and I'm gonna say this, and it's because I really do. The Greens, we've turned around, and whatever you stand with them over the years, we talk about a lot more stuff on here. And I disagree with Donna on a lot of aspects of her approach, her topics, but she focuses on some issues that, we should be looking at that. And that's the kind of stuff that we have made progress in that realm. And, the website, getting documents up there, the transparency, 5 years ago, we didn't have these budget worksheets. It was very hard. You think we have problems now trying to do it. Look at it 5 years ago, and it was a lot harder to turn around and put those budgets together because you didn't have data to turn around and do this stuff. So we are making progress, not where I think I would like to be, but, that's part of the first things I've learned in my role is government runs slow, and it's for a reason, and
That's why it's called a bureaucracy.
yeah.
Well, and if I may, just give you some insight on that as well, as to the challenges, I think, on this end, because certainly I think, I'm here to provide a different perspective and to continue that process, right? Process improvement. I'm here for that reason because I feel the district as a whole is moving forward, and that's one of my very positive philosophies, and I think that's taking place here. It's one of the reasons that I'm here. However, and this is what I'm up against, and this happened very early on in this year, that you guys as a board decided you want to do things a little bit differently in terms of looking at budgets, department budgets, and then voting on the next meeting. I want those department budgets that are posted online tied to what makes it into the final budget. But see, that's a change in your process, right? And you also want the agendas out a week ahead of time. Well, that's great. So my thought, put all the agendas out in one place, right? And then as you finesse those, I can pop them out online and you can tie directly to that draft one of the budget. And the amount of grief, the amount of nonsense, the amount of time that it takes me to address certain people out there who, just because that's not how we did it last year, and it has to be how it was last year, and they're a bunch of thieves and crooks and all this stuff, misleading people. It's not there, it's not posted, what are you doing? Makes it very difficult to try and move forward on other initiatives. And until some of that backs off of it, it really makes it tough, because I'm spending a lot of time trying to get forward progress. And if it's anything that's different than what we did last year, it's just everywhere. And I don't think anyone at this table has any control over that. However, I will put that out there.
And just, the way I would correct that, from my viewpoint, would be, is just, there's just one depository for documents. It is public. It's, you know, there's nothing in any of our packets here that nobody should see. And, you know, I know we've had a couple of non-publics, but those are unique, and no data would come out of that would be posted for that anyways.
You and I talked about that at the beginning of the year, just
Yeah.
to make sure that everything was out there. And the difference was that I wanted everything for the meeting to go into a meeting, simple stuff, to go into a meeting folder. So you all could go out there, look at the meeting, all the department budgets and all that, have your discussions on it, and then I could then go in and modify those department budgets so that what's posted online for the public, that department budget is exactly what you're seeing in draft one. But my efforts were significantly hindered, and it takes a lot of time.
No, I
to
know
kind of
some of these
redo
things take some time.
So when things are either in an agenda in a public folder, or, you know, where they quote unquote, where they were last year in a public folder, it's all public. But it takes a lot of time, it's a lot of retro stuff that I'm just saying, boy, you know, in trying to move things forward, this is gonna be a very long process, because every time I do something different than what was done last year, all hell breaks loose. And that's exceptionally counterproductive, because I am here for the reason that you've indicated are good from a budgetary perspective. You can ask the superintendent. You know, I had a chat many years ago, and maybe I came in a little bit late. There's been significant progress, and there shouldn't be significant. We can do significant progress on my end of the world as well, and I don't think anyone has any control over that. But it certainly is very counterproductive.
I agree.
So it's
Being
tough.
counterproductive is not good.
So we're all set for April meeting then, right?
I think everything's square. Look at that all figured out. Excellent.
Next, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
We didn't discuss correspondence. You moved that?
Correspondence.
I brought the folder back over to you.
So, but you moved it down on the agenda, or we haven't touched on it?
No, we moved the
Minutes.
minutes
Oh,
down,
we just passed by because it was going around? We
because it was
discussed
going around.
I just would like to, so there was many emails in there from somebody about discrepancies from voted on budgets and how they changed throughout. Do we have any insight on are they accurate, what was claimed, and is that happening? I just wanna.
So when we present a voted budget, to look at it as the budget, right? That's the way that we look at it. And therefore, a voted, you know, budget's a voted budget. So 17, for example, we don't have any actuals to compare to at this point, right? We're just looking at that current year budget, and we're looking at it to compare to the 19 proposed. When we go back and we start doing comparisons to budget versus expended, we have to look at that as the adjusted budget column, for the simple fact that, in the way that things are handled, when we have encumbrances at the end of the year, and we have money that rolls forward into the new year, that money gets spent in the new year, and that gets added to the budget. It doesn't get added to the voted budget; it's withheld from the
But it
previous
gets
year.
added to the budget.
But it gets added to the budget.
But that's also, excuse me, that's also reported to Revenue Administration, so it's on the up and up.
Correct.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the auditors do the same thing.
Yeah, no,
Exactly.
the auditors would turn around and adjust
Right.
that, so
Yeah.
I would agree, but it's just to understand all that stuff, and it would be probably a good idea to have a list of all the encumbrances, because you always want to turn around and say, this is what we voted on, that's what passed, that's where we are, and then you had, you know, you brought, you know, 50,000 from the previous year on here, so then now it turns around and increases that by 50 grand, and it's, you know, for
It's an
whatever it
offset.
was.
But the tough thing is, when you remember this year, one of our first meetings said, gee, Jeff, it'd be good to have, you know, like, if we can have, the 19 proposed, 18 budget, right? 18 voted, 17 budget, 17 spend, 16 budget, 16 spend. We didn't have all those. We were missing a column. It was either the spend from 16 or the budget, whatever it was. So let's go ahead and add that, and I added that. And then I add that, and that doubles the time that we have that adjusted budget out there. I don't have a lot of room to explain that in the columns, and when people come in and just pick and say, you know, oh, well, I'm gonna, you know, pull that out, I can put somewhere out there, hey, this is what the encumbrances were, this is where the budget was adjusted. But that's not part of a fun narrative. The more fun narrative is to pull it out and say, you guys are crooks.
So wouldn't when you encumber a fund, that money should be, moved forward to the next year. You could look at it as being an amended, appendage to the current operating budget for the new year, or you could turn around and it's outside of the budget.
It's the spend, it's the issue.
Right.
But if you create its
But the
own
spend still has to go under
sub-account.
that function code.
Jeff?
It's not the budget,
may I?
it's the spend that's the issue.
Man,
Please.
you start at the beginning of the year with this big life raft, and the air goes out of it until we get to the encumbered money, and that's your little life raft that you can't now spend. It's supposed to go off to set back the tax rate for the upcoming first part of the year, legally. That's what it's supposed to do. Yeah, you roll it over in the budget, but technically speaking, it's supposed to offset the tax rate. Just so everybody understands.
Well, encumbrance, wouldn't that be like you turn around and in June, Dr. Metzler signs a contract, with school board approval, all that stuff to do construction in August, but
Great
it's out of the, it's in the previous fiscal year, so it'd be June, you're signing the contract, you're moving that liability to the next year, you're carrying that funds forward.
Right.
So if you're doing that, it shouldn't be when you're turning around and printing the budget, that, if we say 150 grand for construction for wherever it is, that shouldn't be part of the New Year's budget. It should be, it's encumbered, and then when you turn around and you pay that bill and liability, it would be a net transaction of zero. You bring 150 grand on over, you get the invoice in September, you pay it, the net gain of that is zero.
I don't pay against the encumbrance, I pay against the expense line.
But the expense line would be for the new year, and so you're basically taking a encumbered dollar amount from the previous year for construction, bringing it to the new year and adding that to the 150 grand to the new year's construction.
Budget.
Well, yeah, the budget and stuff like that.
There's your answer. And that's it. And it's tough because I can't, and that's a great example. And if the facilities, that account line has 100,000 in it in the new year, and I carry a project over that was started in the previous year for 40, and I encumber 40 at the end of the year, out of that $100,000 budget, they still have to pay the 40 from the previous year. And the only way that they can pay that is to have the budget to pay it. So their budget is, the encumbrance goes over to their budget's increased, rolled over, if you will.
All right, it's a different way of looking at it, but I would look at it as that anything that you encumber would be its own encumbrance categories, and when those bills come in, because you can only encumber things if you have a liability, and if you have that liability, you know what they are, because there are already contracts have been signed and so forth in the previous year, so that you can carry them all forward into its own budget of encumbrances and keep the original budgets as is.
But then it wouldn't capture the expense anywhere.
It would capture the expenses in the encumbrances sub-account.
Yeah, but if you looked and said, well, gee, between the 2 years, I see that you have spend of 100 1 year in facilities and 140 in another year. Well, you only had a budget of whatever it is. You need to. I need to look at what my facilities expenses are, right? I don't have that encumbrance line. Like I can't list encumbrance as an expense. I get what you're saying. I agree with the logic, but I can't show that as, I can't have on my operating statement an encumbrance expense line. And just think of, and I know that, you're a bunch of crooks and all this stuff, but just think of what municipalities and school districts would put into that encumbrance line the next year. Get anything through.
Yeah, but you would have you got to have the legal obligation. If Dr. Metzler didn't have a contract signed for that that he couldn't move it forward. But I know we're getting off.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
You two are more than wait a minute. No. Can I
second that motion?
Good exercise. But if you recall earlier, it's a very simple explanation. But when you do what you do and you try and forward progress, it's very. I don't say the discussion's counterproductive. But I think a lot of the cloudiness is counterproductive to the work. I'll point that out, that's all, so.
One more thing.
I just want to comment because it's clear as mud. I gave you a real-life experience as a middle school athletic director. There was a safety concern. I don't remember what year. We needed a wrestling mat, okay? Cost $30,000. The whole budget I had for new equipment, replacement equipment, stipends for coaches wasn't $30,000. So where do you go? I go to the business administrator with the approval of the superintendent, and we work out a plan. At the time, it was Mr. Tardif and me. If I give away this much money towards that mat. We encumbered that 10 grand per year, and we made a contract with the company we purchased it from, so we could get the mat delivered for a safety concern that we paid over the next 3 years. That's as simple as I can put it for you. That's a concrete example. Kids' safety, you buy it, you use it, you move on.
All right, see you next year.
Amen.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All right.
All in favor?
I'd like to hear a motion to adjourn.
Just did
Did,
that.
Dan second?
Just did that. Is there, and there must be a second,
Oh,
right?
it's done.
I heard there were 5 of them.
Votes
All
already
in favor? Aye. Done. Thank you very much, everyone, for all your work.